Chapter 986. The inner demon was right. No one was born crazy, and no one was born evil or good. Chu Xiu could see all of Kuang Xieyue's experiences in the illusion. For an existence like the inner demon, who had once created an illusion that could confuse metaphysic realm experts, it was very easy to confuse someone like Kuang Xieyue, who had a huge flaw in his mental state. Even the changes in his mental state could not be hidden from the inner demon and Chu Xiu. That was why Chu Xiu had said that Kuang Xieyue was very pitiful. However, everyone in this world suffered. Who was not pitiful? Who was not worthy of sympathy? Chu Xiu's heart was as hard as iron. He would kill if he was pitiful, and he would kill if he was sympathetic. However, at this moment, everyone was stunned as they watched Chu Xiu stab Kuang Xieyue to death, including Lin Songlong. He had not made a move earlier, not because he did not want to save Kuang Xieyue, but because he was thinking of a way to pull Kuang Xieyue back so that he would not be sent to his death. They were both Elysium divine generals, and Lin Songlong knew Kuang Xieyue's strength. Under the premise of using the evil moon blade, Kuang Xieyue could at least hold on for a while. However, who would have thought that Kuang Xieyue would be stabbed to death by Chu Xiu just like that? This blade was simply inexplicable. The illusion created by the inner demon was very long, so long that Kuang Xieyue could remember his most painful period. However, in the outside world, it was only a moment. In that moment, Kuang Xieyue's mental defense was completely broken, and he was stabbed to death by Chu Xiu without any resistance. Pointing at Chu Xiu, Lin Songlong's eyes were filled with anger and disbelief. He, Chu Xiu, had actually dared to kill a Elysium divine general. However, Lin Songlong was not stupid enough to seek revenge on Chu Xiu at this time. He was stronger than the normal Kuang Xieyue, but not stronger than the crazy Kuang Xieyue who had used the evil moon blade. Even in this state, Kuang Xieyue had been killed by Chu Xiu. Right now, he could only return to the Elysium divine general and report to the divine general. Seeing Lin Songlong flee, Chu Xiu did not give chase. There were many more important things at hand than Lin Songlong. As for the enmity between him and the Elysium, it was not something that could be resolved by killing Lin Songlong. There were so many people watching. Chu Xiu placed his hand on the evil moon saber. Instantly, the evil moon saber emitted a feeling of resistance. A frenzied massacre intent continued to affect Chu Xiu. This saber was a demonic weapon among demonic weapons. At the same time that it was powerful, the artifact spirit had started to overtake its master and affect its user. Even the current Chu Xiu couldn't suppress it. Therefore, Chu Xiu directly threw it into the secret space box. However, no one noticed that there was a glimmer of light coming from Kuang Xieyue's corpse. At the same time, far away in the Elysium Divine General of West Kunlun, in the dim main hall, one of the 9 strangely shaped dragon-shaped candles suddenly went out. The next moment, a man in a black robe with red hair appeared in the main hall. He stared at the extinguished candle and suddenly said, "Kuang Xieyue is dead." The man in the black robe with red hair was the divine general, Jun Wushan. However, when he learned that Kuang Xieyue was dead, he did not feel the slightest bit of sadness or anger. It was as if this sentence was just a statement. At this moment, another figure appeared in the main hall. It was an old man in a dragon-embroidered robe. On his feet was a pair of purple gold boots with dragons embroidered on them. They were very luxurious. He was tall and mighty, with a lion's nose and tiger's eyes. Just by standing there, he gave people a feeling that he was not angry. Kuang Xieyue is dead. Someone actually dared to kill a divine general of Elysium. The old man's voice was like the roar of thunder, causing the entire hall to rumble. Jun Wushan said expressionlessly, "A divine general of Elysium is also a human. There are many who dare to kill a divine general of Elysium." The old man snorted coldly and said, "Don't worry, master. Find someone to temporarily replace my seal." 3 months. No. I will bring that person's head back in 2 months. Jun Wuxian shook his head and said, no need. I will go personally. Activate the infinite universe formation and directly send me to Guangxieyue. He should not have left yet. There are many who can kill a divine general of Elysium in this Jianghu. However, how many of them can still live after killing a divine general of Elysium? The old man was surprised and said, but master, once the infinite universe formation is activated, it will affect the seal. Let me go. You don't have to worry about such a small matter. Sigh, it's a pity for Guangxieyue. He was the one I thought most highly of. It's a pity that he lost control of his mind and destroyed himself. Even if he is not killed this time, he will not be able to keep his position if he goes crazy again during the next divine general ranking. Jun Wuxian did not agree or refute. He just looked at the old man and said again, activate the infinite universe formation. The old man opened his mouth but did not say another word. He could only sigh and control the complicated formation in the hall. In the next moment, a powerful wave directly surged into the hall. The void was torn, and a black crack appeared. Jun Wuxian stepped into it. When the crack disappeared, the old man sighed. What an eventful time. At this moment, in Liaodong County in the north, next to a small village not far from the northern fluttering snow city, a figure in white walked in the heavy snow. It was clearly a cold winter snow outside, but the area around him was as warm as spring. Wherever he walked, the ice and snow melted, and there were even sprouts that broke through the ground. However, as he walked away, the sprouts withered in an instant, and were covered by the snow in the blink of an eye. In an instant, the withering and flourishing of the 4 seasons replayed under his feet. The figure in white looked like a young man in his 20s. His hair was loose, and there was a thin red mark on his forehead. It looked like a closed vertical eye. He was obviously a young man, but there was an indescribable temperament on him. He was not old, but the vicissitudes of life brought about by the passage of time. In an instant, the world changed into mulberry fields. Compared to the desolate and uninhabited north, although Liaodong County was covered in snow most of the year, there were still ordinary people living in it. This small village was one of them. At this moment, a child about 7 or 8 years old was making a snowman outside the village. He was wrapped in layers of cotton clothes and was as round as a little bear. The young man walked to the side of the child, bent down and asked, "Excuse me, is that the north?" The child was shrouded in a warm feeling and was not afraid at all. He pointed in a direction and said crisply, "That way." "Thank you." The young man touched the child's head. In an instant, a faint light had already entered the child's body. If someone were to examine the child's body at this moment, they would be shocked to find that although the child was young, the meridians in his body were extremely clear. If he practiced martial arts, there would be no hindrance in the circulation of his inner strength. He was definitely a genius among geniuses. Of course, the child naturally did not know about this. The young man stood up and took a step forward. He had already disappeared in front of the child's eyes. This immediately made the child's mouth open in shock. Wiping away his snot, the child turned back and shouted towards the village, "Mother! Come out and see the god." A roar that sounded like the 9-transformation lion roar of the Great Light Temple came from the village. "I think you look like a god. Little brat, why aren't you scurrying back to eat? If you don't come back, I'll give you a good spanking." At this time, in the primitive demon's cave, most people were still in a state of shock. They were shocked that Chu Xiu had actually stabbed an Elysium divine general to death. But at this moment, there was a shocking fluctuation in the void. The space was being torn apart layer by layer. Everyone looked over there in shock. They even thought that the primitive demon's cave was about to collapse. They were all prepared to snatch the treasure and escape at any time. But as the space was torn apart layer by layer, it actually formed a door. A figure in a black robe with red hair walked out from it. Everyone present was stunned. Obviously, no one could recognize who this person was. Only Senior Qing, who had not made a move all this time, suddenly stood up straight. His eyes were filled with shock. Why would he appear here? At this time, Lin Songlong, who had already escaped far away, sensed the aura. He immediately ran back as fast as he could and shouted in surprise, "Master! Why are you here?" Hearing Lin Songlong call him that, everyone present immediately knew who the person in front of them was. Number 4 on the sovereign list, Elysium Master Jun Wuxian. This legendary existence, even among the few heaven and earth profound understanding existences present, no one had ever dealt with him before. Yi Xiaonan stared at Jun Wuxian. No one knew what he was thinking. The number 1 demonic cultivator in the world almost stood at the peak of the underworld. But he was suppressed by 2 legendary existences. Perhaps he was thinking, how far apart was he from Jun Wuxian? Jun Wuxian also subconsciously looked at Yi Xiaonan. It should be said that only Yi Xiaonan was worthy of his attention. But in the next moment, Jun Wuxian turned his gaze away and with a slap, he sent Lin Songlong's entire body flying into a mountain peak. Lin Songlong struggled to climb out and immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. This slap was more serious than the injury he had suffered when he fought with Chu Xiu. Jun Wuxian did not scold him. There was no anger on his face. He just asked lightly, "Who killed Kuang Xieyue?" Lin Songlong coughed and spat out another mouthful of blood. But there was no expression on his face. It was as if being slapped by Jun Wuxian was natural. Lin Songlong pointed at Chu Xiu and said, "It was Chu Xiu. Kuang Xieyue died in the hands of Chu Xiu and the demonic moon blade was also taken by him." At this moment, everyone present immediately turned to look at Chu Xiu. Some were surprised, some were gloating, and some were worried. Everyone knew that Chu Xiu had killed the Elysium Divine General and this matter would not end so easily. But even the people present did not expect that retribution would come so quickly. Chapter 987. No one had expected Jun Wuxian's sudden appearance. Chu Xiu had not expected Jun Wuxian, who was thousands of miles away and still on Mount Kunlun, to appear here. This time, Chu Xiu had indeed miscalculated. He wasn't a god, so he couldn't predict everything. Not to mention, he couldn't predict how the other party would appear in front of him as soon as he killed someone. No one could predict this. Moreover, according to the understanding of the people of Jianghu, every time they appeared in Jianghu, there should be a purpose. Moreover, there was a time limit for the divine general of Elysium to leave Elysium. In the end, who would have thought that because Kuang Xieyue was killed, the master of Elysium, who had barely appeared in Jianghu, would come in person? At that moment, Chu Xiu had simulated it countless times in his mind. This time, he was afraid that he would really be in danger. There was no other way but to fight. Because his opponent was Jun Wuxian, the master of Elysium. In the face of absolute power, all schemes were useless. Chu Xiu's mental energy had already seeped into the secret space box. He was ready to use the blood demon transformation skill and use the evil moon blade. At the same time, Chu Xiu looked at Shang Tianliang. His meaning was obvious. If I die, the rest of the people from Merchant City will have to eat sand for the rest of their lives in Emerald City. Without Shang Tianliang's protection, the resources that Chu Xiu gave them would be used up. They would be worse off than before. Feeling Chu Xiu's gaze, Shang Tianliang could not help but want to curse. In the past, Chu Xiu had used him as a fighter. The opponents that Chu Xiu had found for him were slightly more troublesome, but he could still deal with them. Even if Su Ci and Rama came, he could at least exchange a few blows with them. But now, what kind of monster did Chu Xiu find for him? Feeling the invisible aura from Jun Wuxian, even Shang Tianliang could not help but tremble. How was he going to fight? At that moment, Jun Wuxian was also staring at Chu Xiu. He vaguely remembered this name. It seemed that he had a feud with Kuang Xieyue last time. However, all of this was no longer important. He did not care about Chu Xiu's identity, nor did he care about Chu Xiu's strength. Killing a divine general of the Elysium meant paying with his life. It was that simple. The Elysium did not need to consider too much, nor did they need to fear anyone. Hence, after locking onto Chu Xiu, Jun Wuxian did not even say a word and immediately attacked. Just when Chu Xiu was ready to fight with his life on the line, another aura barged into the tense atmosphere and instantly diluted the aura. A white-robed young man stepped through the air. Wherever he went, the demonic energy that had gathered in the primitive demon cave for millions of years would dissipate. It was as if he could only accept the power of his subordinates. The moment he saw this person, Jun Wuxian's expressionless face suddenly twitched. His originally emotionless eyes revealed an extremely complicated expression. Zhongshenxiu. When Jun Wuxian spat out these 3 words, the crowd immediately burst into an uproar. Third on the sovereign list. Of course, before news of Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji arrived, he was actually the world's number 1. The legendary Sky Lord of the Mahasvara, Zhongshenxiu. There was no past, no future. From the moment he appeared, he was the world's number 1. At this moment, everyone could not remain calm. What day was it today that these 2 legendary existences actually appeared here at the same time? Jun Wuxian, you promised me that you would not leave the Elysium for 300 years. Now, you have broken the promise. Zhongshenxiu spoke slowly, his tone was neither fast nor slow, neither sad nor happy. Jun Wuxian said expressionlessly, I came out of the Elysium to kill. My divine general died outside. You have broken the promise. Jun Wuxian's face was a little twisted. I said that I am only here to kill. After I kill him, I will return to the Elysium without delay. Could it be that my divine general was killed outside, and as the Lord of the Elysium, I turn a blind eye to it? Zhongshenxiu still spoke in that unhurried tone, you have broken the promise. Zhongshenxiu. Jun Wuxian roared. The surrounding space distorted, and there was a faint flame wandering in it. Lin Songlong was stunned. How many years had it been? He had never seen such an expression on the Lord's face. It could even be said that it was the first time he had seen the Lord so angry. Sigh. Zhongshenxiu let out a soft sigh. With a raise of his hand, the underground river in the sky that had already healed was torn apart in an instant. The monstrous water of the underground river rushed down and gathered in Zhongshenxiu's hand, turning into a giant sword 10,000 feet long. Jun Wuxian's eyes shone with endless brilliance. At this moment, the space around him began to distort layer by layer. 6 huge vortexes appeared around him, enveloping the giant sword. From the 6 vortexes came bursts of strange auras. Some were as holy as gods, some were gloomy and evil, and one could even vaguely hear the wailing of hungry ghosts. Seeing this scene, Lin Songlong's expression suddenly changed. 6 paths of Buddha's disillusionment brilliance wheel. In order to cultivate this secret technique, the Lord had even plunged his 7 emotions and 6 desires into the 6 paths of reincarnation in the illusory mystic realm to temper them. If one of his emotions collapsed, he would immediately lose control of his state of mind and become a complete lunatic. This technique was something that the previous lords of the Elysium had not chosen to cultivate, but Jun Wuxian had succeeded in cultivating it. However, since the day of his success, he had not used it even once. But now, facing Zhongshenxiu, Jun Wuxian had actually used all his strength in his trump card. Under the 6 paths of Buddha's disillusionment brilliance wheel, the giant sword was forcefully crushed and turned into a pool of water mist. But in the boundless water mist, Zhongshenxiu gently took a step forward. The boundless water mist condensed into a huge figure, hazy and resplendent, like a celestial being. But looking at the figure, it seemed to be Zhongshenxiu himself. The huge figure pointed a finger down, and with a seemingly light finger, Jun Wushan's 6 paths of Buddha's disillusionment brilliance will began to shatter. The 6 paths collapsed and the space was torn apart. In an instant, the entire primitive devil cave began to tremble, and in the next moment, the wheel was completely extinguished. Jun Wushan took 3 steps back, his face expressionless, but the divine light in his eyes did not dissipate, and was still flickering. Zhong Xianxia waved his hand, and the sky-piercing key with the demonic patterns directly passed through the surrounding natural array formation, and mysteriously fell into Zhong Xianxia's hand. Even the array formation was not damaged in the slightest. "This thing, I want it." Jun Wushan looked at Zhong Xianxia expressionlessly. After a moment, he waved his hand, and the portal that he had just appeared from appeared again. Jun Wushan directly carried Lin Songlong and entered the portal. When Jun Wushan left, Chu Xiu's side also immediately breathed a sigh of relief. To be honest, it wasn't just Chu Xiu who was confused by this series of events. Almost everyone present could be said to have no idea what was going on. They only knew one thing, and that was that the waters of the pugilistic world were truly unfathomable. Previously, they thought that Yi Xiaonan was at the peak of the pugilistic world. They didn't expect that these 2 legendary existences simply stood at the peak of the peak. Whether it was Jun Wushan or Zhong Xianxia, almost no one understood what had happened. Perhaps only Yi Xiaonan understood a little. At this time, Zhong Xianxia held the sky-piercing key with the demonic patterns in his hand and felt everyone's eyes on him. He waved his hand and said, "You guys continue." After saying that, Zhong Xianxia took a step forward, and his figure disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. There was a moment of silence, but in the next moment, Yi Xiaonan's powerful aura erupted like a volcano. Heaven and earth reversal, one hand mending the heavens. The powerful power of the heaven-mending heart sutra was exerted to the extreme by Yi Xiaonan in an instant. In the blink of an eye, the water of the underground river was torn apart, causing it to flow backwards once again. Moreover, Yi Xiaonan's moon blade slashed down, as if it had passed through space. One moment, he was still fighting against the Sword Hut's myriad sword catalog, and the next moment, he appeared on the peak of the dragon vein. With a loud bang, the blade slashed down, and the power of the demonic dragon's dragon vein erupted in an instant. The power was earth-shattering, causing the entire primitive devil cave to tremble. The expressions of everyone present changed. Was Yi Xiaonan provoked by Jun Wushan and Zhong Xianxia? Was he crazy? Seeing this scene, Chu Xiu didn't hesitate. He directly said in a deep voice, "Do it." The array on the demonic dragon's dragon vein had been cut open. It was time to see who would get the demonic seed and the demonic blade. At the same time, Senior Qing of the Celestial Master Mansion, who hadn't moved before, also moved. He had always said that he was an old man, that he always came out with a walking stick, and that he looked like he was going to die soon. But when it came to the real deal, this person's movements were more agile than anyone else's. Endless lightning surrounded Senior Qing. At this moment, his originally stooped back instantly straightened. He held the thunder in his hand, and a thunder god Dharma idol condensed behind him. With a slap, the purple heaven divine thunder instantly exploded, and Sheng Beixian, who was in front of him, was slapped away. Although Sheng Beixian was a slippery person, he still had strength. In the entire demonic lineage, he was also considered a figure. But in the end, he was slapped away dozens of feet. He was completely dumbfounded. What was going on? On the other side, Dong Huang Taiyi used the burning sky treasure mirror to the extreme. Even the sky full of flames was mixed with a trace of blood. He was burning his own blood essence. Sect leader. Seize the demonic seed. When a powerhouse at the level of Dong Huang Taiyi burned his blood essence and attacked with all his might, even existences in the mysterious realm of heaven and earth had to take it seriously. For the sake of this demonic seed, everyone in moon-worshipping cult was really putting their lives on the line. They had the posture of killing gods and Buddhas who stood in their way. Chapter 988. Moon-worshipping cult began to go all out. It should be said that all of the bright demon lineage in West Chu were going all out. They were different from sects that like to play petty tricks like the evil Pole sect. In the entire West Chu, all of the bright demon lineage sects respected moon-worshipping cult. Both sides would suffer and prosper together. As long as they helped Yi Xiaonan obtain the demon seed, would they need to worry about not getting any benefits? The sect master of the five poison sect, He Saihua, even took out all of the goo insects and poisonous creatures that she had refined. That power was also very shocking. With Dong Wang Tai going all out and the other bright demon lineage martial artists going all out, Yi Xiaonan's body shone with astral energy. With one hand, he mended the sky and cracked the earth. The endless water of the underground river turned into a waterspout that swept through the world. The power of the world was simply terrifying. With one move, Luo Mo and the others were forced back. Yi Xiaonan reached out and from the waterspout, a huge demon hand reached out and directly grabbed the demon seed. Seeing this scene, everyone's expression changed. The demon seed had fallen into Yi Xiaonan's hands. The hope of getting it back was almost zero. At this time, Chu Xiu glared at Shang Tianliang, meaning to look at him and then at you. Dong Wang Tai was willing to burn his blood essence for Yi Xiaonan, so couldn't you do a little more? Although Chu Xiu could find many people as loyal as Dong Wang Tai, they weren't strong enough. Those who were strong, like Shang Tianliang, wouldn't risk their lives for him. So Shang Tianliang glared back at Chu Xiu without hesitation. You found so many troublesome opponents for I, and now you want I to burn my blood essence to help you? Dream on. If Shang Tianliang didn't want to risk his life, then Chu Xiu would have to do it himself. From the beginning, Chu Xiu's goal wasn't the demon seed. Since Yi Xiaonan had already come, Chu Xiu knew his limits. He didn't want to fight with Yi Xiaonan for the demon seed. Therefore, he could only take a step back and fight for the stone saber. At this moment, the mental demon in Chu Xiu's mind suddenly said, "The weapon spirit on the saber you snatched earlier is very violent. If you attach me to the saber, I can temporarily suppress the weapon spirit for a period of time." This time, Chu Xiu was stunned by the inner demon's words. Just now, Chu Xiu had indeed relied on this inner demon to deal with Kuang Xiue so quickly. But now, this inner demon had taken the initiative to help him. What was it planning? In Chu Xiu's mind, the inner demon took the form of a human. It shrugged and said, "I'm trapped now. It's going to be very difficult for me to escape. According to the way you humans do things, especially a greedy human like you will definitely use all kinds of methods to study me and bring out my greatest value. Instead of that, I might as well show my value now and save myself from suffering. This way, everyone will be better, right?" Chu Xiu looked at the inner demon in surprise. This thing was indeed the incarnation of the darkest existence in the human heart. Its control over the human heart had reached a very deep level. It was right. If Chu Xiu couldn't figure out its use, then Chu Xiu would throw this inner demon to Master Yuan Ji or Feng Buping to study. As for whether it would eventually die or survive, it was not Chu Xiu's business. However, since it had said so, Chu Xiu directly asked, "How long can you suppress the evil moon saber's weapon spirit?" The inner demon said, "My power mainly lies in breaking through the human heart's defense and building an illusion. To deal with the weapon spirit, I can only use the simplest power to suppress it. I estimate that I can only do it for a quarter of an hour." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "A quarter of an hour is enough." As soon as his voice fell, in an instant, Chu Xiu's body bloomed with a dazzling red blood qi. It even stimulated the powerful demonic energy in the primitive demon's cave. In an instant, the sky changed color. The blood demon transformation technique was displayed. In an instant, Chu Xiu's power skyrocketed. It had even risen to the level of a heaven and earth mystic enlightenment powerhouse. Lu Jianghu's brows suddenly jumped. Again. It had to be known that he was the one who created the blood demon transformation technique. In the end, he didn't even use it once. It was all used by Chu Xiu. It could even be said that as the creator of this secret technique, his understanding of it might not be as good as Chu Xiu's. Lu Jianghu couldn't help but curl his lips. With the sect master's indestructible demon pill, he could be willful. If he had the indestructible demon pill, then he would have dared to bare his teeth at that old Daoist Ning Xuanji. The moment Chu Xiu's strength erupted, the others had already noticed it. Su Ci, who was the closest to Chu Xiu, pressed his palms together. Buddha light filled the skies and a resplendent Buddha kingdom fell down, illuminating the primitive demon's cave with a holy and glorious feeling. Moreover, it wasn't just Su Ci. Countless righteous path martial artists also came forward to intercept Chu Xiu. Only 3 things were bred from the primitive demon's cave's dragon vein. The strange stone was taken away by Zhongshanxiu and the demon seed ultimately fell into Yi Xiaonan's hands. And finally, if the strange blade-like stone was obtained by Chu Xiu, then the righteous path martial artists would have come to primitive demon's cave in vain. Facing so many powerhouses attacking together, it was unknown when Chu Xiu had replaced the peerless heavenly blade with the evil moon blade. The powerful and crazy aura of the blade had just begun to attack Chu Xiu when it was completely suppressed by his heart demons. In an instant, the evil moon blade in Chu Xiu's hand shined with a bright and evil blood-red moonlight. For a quarter of an hour, Chu Xiu could completely control this ominous weapon from ancient times. Chu Xiu closed his eyes, and the saber attack that Dugu Weiwa had unleashed in the blood-red lotus's illusory realm appeared before his eyes once again. This time, Chu Xiu seemed to understand some of the saber intent within it. In truth, there was only one word in that saber intent: break. The word break was like a blade that could cut through stone, destroying everything in its path. There was no existence that could stop this break saber. This could be called an extreme saber intent. In truth, it was the most simple truth of the saber path. The great Tao was simple. When Dugu Weiwei slashed out with this saber, he had already returned to his true self. As he slashed out with the word break, there was no existence that could stop him. Now, Chu Xiu had exchanged the blood demon heaven transformation art for extreme strength and the ancient ominous weapon, evil moon, for extreme sharpness. As he slashed out with this break saber once more, his strength and even his state of mind were 30% similar to Dugu Weiwei's. Although it was only 30%, it was enough. As the blade slashed down, everything seemed to be sliced into 2 halves in an instant. Time was cut apart, space was cut apart, and the universe was cut in half. Time seemed to come to a standstill for a moment. In the next moment, the tens of thousands of Buddhist kingdoms that Su Ci had created completely collapsed. As for the other righteous path martial artists that stood in front of Chu Xiu, the stronger ones had their offensive completely cut off by Chu Xiu. As for the weaker ones, the saber intent entered their bodies, causing them to vomit blood and fly away. As for the weaker ones, they were directly cut in half by this saber. The strangest thing was that no matter what posture they took, they were all cut in half from the point between their eyebrows. The power of this saber could no longer be described with words. And Chu Xiu took advantage of the power of this saber. Ignoring his burning blood vitality, his figure turned into a blood-red light as he directly arrived in front of the dragon vein and took the stone saber into his robes. All the righteous path martial artists present revealed a trace of unwillingness. They had come here to prevent the demonic path martial artists from obtaining the supreme treasures of the primitive demon cave. But now, they had failed to obtain any of the 3 treasures they had set out to obtain, and 2 of them were in the hands of the demonic path martial artists. To them, this was a complete and utter defeat. However, the demon seed had fallen into Yi Xiaonan's hands. They didn't dare to snatch it, nor could they. But this wasn't necessarily the case for Chu Xiu. Although the power of his saber just now was astonishing, no one present was mediocre. They could almost instantly guess that Chu Xiu must have paid a certain price to use such a powerful saber strike. It wouldn't last for long. But before they could attack, the entire primitive demon cave began to shake. Cracks began to appear in the underground river above everyone's heads. Some sort of law began to disappear, and in an instant, the water of the underground river began to flow downwards. In an instant, everyone found themselves in a monstrous flood. This time, the water of the underground river was not broken by everyone, and some of the laws of heaven and earth were losing effect. This should be related to the damage to the dragon vein. Last time, even though Dugu Weiwa had also come here and obtained the things inside, he did not destroy the dragon vein. Thus, it took 500 years for the demon seed and other things to be born. This time, Yi Shaonan was ruthless. His saber had severely damaged the foundation of the dragon vein, and then Chu Xiu took the stone saber. His actions were not gentle, so in this way, the dragon vein completely collapsed, and it also caused the entire primitive demon cave to change color. No matter how strong a human was, it couldn't be stronger than the power of heaven and earth. After the primitive demon cave began to collapse, everyone had no intention of snatching anything else. They all fled frantically to the exit. Chu Xiu also retracted the blood demon transformation technique and shouted, "Retreat!" Everyone followed Chu Xiu and fled to the exit. Fortunately, everyone present was relatively strong, especially on Chu Xiu's side. There wasn't even a real pellet state, so they escaped smoothly. After escaping outside, Chu Xiu suddenly gasped, and his face was slightly pale. The power of the blood demon transformation technique was amazing, but it also consumed a lot of vitality. Even if Chu Xiu only maintained one saber just now, he had consumed a lot of vitality at this time. If he didn't have the eternal demon pill, he might even be seriously injured on the spot. I don't know what Lu Jianghe, that timid guy, was thinking at the beginning. He almost never fought with others, but he actually developed this kind of means that he would only use when fighting to the end. At this time, Lu Jianghe suddenly looked at Chu Xiu as if he felt that Chu Xiu was slandering him, but he was glared back by Chu Xiu. Chapter 989. The Righteous Path and Fiend Path cultivators fled the primitive demon cave in a panic. But this time, they no longer had the strength to cause trouble for Chu Xiu. Some of the Righteous Path cultivators who were too slow were buried in the primitive demon cave. The might of heaven and earth was not something a human could resist. At this time, they discovered that another group of people had escaped as well. They were Si Wuya, Yuan Guang, and the others who were trapped in the deep pool. The deep pool was a branch of the demonic dragon vein. When Yi Shaonan injured the dragon vein automatically drew power from those branches. Hence, the power of the deep pool had weakened. When the dragon vein collapsed, the power that bound them disappeared, and they regained their freedom. The Righteous Path cultivators were overjoyed to see their patriarch from 800 years ago. However, the Fiend Path cultivators' atmosphere was not so harmonious. Si Wuya and the others looked at Chu Xiu with unfriendly eyes. They clearly had a chance to leave, but this Fiend Path cultivator refused to let them go. He even spoke rudely. If it weren't for the accident in the primitive demon cave, they might not have been able to leave in this lifetime. However, Si Wuya and the others did not say anything. When they were trapped in the primitive demon cave, their minds were a little muddled. Now that they came out of the primitive demon cave and saw the strength of Chu Xiu's side, especially Shang Tianliang, a heaven and earth illuminating realm expert, they instantly sobered up. They could not afford to offend this Fiend Path cultivator for now. Hence, they could only give up and not provoke Chu Xiu. At this time, the entrance to the primitive demon cave began to tremble. It was clearly about to close. However, just as the primitive demon cave was about to close, a white-robed figure walked out unhurriedly. It was Zhong Shenxiu. Everyone present was stunned for a moment. Didn't this person leave long ago? Why did he come out? Zhong Xianxia looked around and walked up to Fang Qishao, who was closest to him. He asked, "Excuse me, where is the east? I want to return to the East Sea." Seventh young Master Fang was confused by the question. He subconsciously pointed to the east and said, "There." Zhong Xianxia nodded and said, "Many thanks." He subconsciously raised his hand, but after looking at Fang Qishao, he put it down again and turned to leave. In just a few steps, he had already disappeared from everyone's sight and perception. Only after Zhong Xianxia left did everyone react. This number one person of the present age, could he be someone who had no sense of direction? Before this, they were still wondering why Zhong Xianxia was the last one to come out even though he had left long ago. It seemed that he had gotten lost in the primitive demon cave and had only found the exit at the end. At that moment, in the main hall of the Gate of Heaven, Jun Wuxian walked out from the space portal with Lin Songlong in his hand. The elder from the Heaven Gate had been waiting inside. When he saw Jun Wuxian bringing Lin Songlong back, he went up to them and wanted to say something. However, Jun Wuxian waved his hand and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Lin Songlong jumped in fright and hurriedly said, "Sect Master, you." Before he could finish speaking, Jun Wuxian sent him flying with a slap. He crashed into the main hall and vomited blood. Jun Wuxian wiped away the blood and said lightly, "I met Zhong Xianxia and was no match for his great boundless sword qi and void spirit finger. I will be in seclusion during this period of time. There is news of the birth of the Heaven Pass, so we must treat it seriously." The elder's eyes flashed with horror. "It's Zhong Xianxia again. What is his background?" The Heaven Gate was very mysterious, but Zhong Xianxia of the Great Boundless Heaven was even more mysterious. He was a person without a past. Jun Wuxian turned his gaze to Lin Songlong and said expressionlessly, "Do you know why I hit you?" Lin Songlong lowered his head and said in a low voice, "I know. Kuang Xieyue was a madman, but he was not. He had failed to stop Kuang Xieyue and ruin things, so he naturally deserved to be hit. This time, Kuang Xieyue was dead. If Kuang Xieyue was still alive, he would have been better off dead. So he had only suffered 2 slaps, which was already considered very light. Your authority to leave the Heaven Gate has been revoked. Wait for another reincarnation. The next time a Heaven Pass appears, replace it with someone else." Lin Songlong revealed a bitter smile and said, "Yes, Sect Master." In truth, the unluckiest person this time was Lin Songlong. He had been able to maintain a clear mind, but he had been ruined by Kuang Xieyue. But Kuang Xieyue was already dead. How could he bicker with a dead person? At this time, in the northern lands, the primitive devil cave had been destroyed, and the righteous and demonic factions had dispersed. This time, the righteous faction had undoubtedly suffered the most. Because not only had they failed to achieve their goal, but they had also suffered heavy losses. The demon seed had been obtained by Yi Shaonan. Yi Shaonan, who was already powerful, would definitely advance further this time. Although he did not know what the stone saber that Chu Xiu had obtained was, since it was born from the demon dragon's dragon vein, it was clearly not an ordinary object. And in this battle, many people had died at the hands of Yi Shaonan and Chu Xiu. Of course, most of them died at the moment when the power of the primitive devil cave erupted. The power of heaven and earth was the most terrifying. After returning to the subduing martial hall, Chu Xiu was also reviewing his actions in the primitive devil cave and reflecting on it. This time in the primitive devil cave, his mistake was indeed a bit big, and he had almost put himself in danger. It could even be said that if Zhong Xianxia had not arrived in time, he would have been in danger when facing Jun Wuxian. It was just that Chu Xiu's brain circuit was a bit different from ordinary people. Ordinary people who encountered such a thing would definitely warn themselves that next time they could not be so impulsive, and that they should be patient and steady. But after Chu Xiu reflected on it, he did not think that killing Kuang Xieyue was wrong. In fact, if he was given another chance, he would kill Kuang Xieyue again. Chu Xiu believed that his main mistake was underestimating the enemy. He had always regarded Elysium as a normal martial arts sect, but now it seemed that Elysium was not the same as other martial arts sections. So the next time they fought, Chu Xiu had to first think of a way to escape or deal with it. Originally, Chu Xiu had planned to go into seclusion. He had fought so many people in the primitive Devil Cave, and he had also seen many heaven and earth mysterious realm powerhouses fight with his own eyes. There were even legendary existences like Jun Wuxian and Zhongshanxiu. He had also comprehended the Great Compassion poem and Dugu Weiwei's break formula saber intent. He would definitely need to go into seclusion for a period of time to digest it. However, there was still one thing that Chu Xiu had to figure out, and that was how to turn the stone saber he had seized into an existence like the demonic saber Ting Chunyu. So Chu Xiu directly called Lu Jianghe. Taking out the stone saber, Chu Xiu asked, "How should this thing be used? I studied it for a long time, but I didn't find anything strange in it. I wanted to cut it open, but it turned out that this thing was as hard as a divine weapon." Lu Jianghe said, "Didn't I say that this thing needs to be tempered with the rootless sacred flame, and the outer stone skin needs to be refined to become a real demonic saber?" Chu Xiu frowned and said, "But the rootless sacred flame is sealed at the peak of the Kunlun devil cult and sealed by the Subodhi Zen monastery with the 6 paths of Buddha's rebirth formation. Once I climb the Kunlun mountain, I will face the siege of the entire righteous martial arts world. Not to mention me, even Yi Xiaonan can't stop them." The Kunlun devil cult could be said to be a taboo in the current martial arts world. Yi Xiaonan's strength was now strong enough. He was the #1 demon in the world, and he had so many helpers from the bright demon lineage. But even with this strength, Yi Xiaonan didn't dare to enter West Kunlun. No one in the martial arts world wanted to see another Kunlun devil cult. At that time, even the old Celestial Master, who had been retiring in the Celestial Master Mansion, would go all out. No one knew what terrifying trump card Wind Cloud Sword Tomb would dig out from the grave. It could be said that if someone wanted to go to West Kunlun, it meant that he would be the enemy of the entire martial arts world. Holding the stone saber, Chu Xiu touched his chin and said, "According to what you said, this stone saber is actually just a saber embryo. It needs to be refined before it can be used. I have a good relationship with the refining master Mo Yezi. I'll ask him to see if he can refine it." Lu Jianghe shook his head and said, "You don't even need to think about it. With the strength of our sect in the past, would there be a shortage of refining masters?" When the sect leader first got listened to Spring Rain, he asked this group of refining masters to think of a way, but none of them could refine it. This stone saber was formed from the devil dragon's dragon vein with boundless devil chi. It is a natural object. And the rootless sacred fire at the peak of West Kunlun was also born from the gathering of the dragon vein. Only a natural object can refine a natural object. Otherwise, it would be useless for anyone else. Chu Xiu frowned. "Doesn't this mean that this thing is useless for the time being?" Lu Jianghe shrugged and said, "It seems so now." Chu Xiu looked at Lu Jianghe with some hostility. He had even used the blood demon transformation technique to get this thing and risked his life. In the end, he was told that he couldn't use it for the time being. Feeling Chu Xiu's gaze, Lu Jianghe hurriedly said, "Don't worry. Haste makes waste. I'm very optimistic about you. It's not impossible for you to take over West Kunlun in the future. Anyway, this magic saber will be yours sooner or later. It's better to grab it first than to let it fall into the hands of others, isn't it?" Chu Xiu waved his hand and asked Lu Jianghe to get out first. This guy had never been reliable, but the last sentence he said really made Chu Xiu a little tempted. It was not impossible for him to take over West Kunlun. It should be said that whether Chu Xiu wanted to take over West Kunlun or not, he would be forced to take this road in the end. The righteous and the demonic were already like fire and water. When the demonic rose, the righteous disappeared. At the moment, Yi Xiaonan was bearing the pressure of most of the righteous. When Chu Xiu also reached Yi Xiaonan's position one day, the pressure would be transferred to him. When Chu Xiu surpassed Yi Xiaonan, the entire righteous Wulin would not sit back and watch Chu Xiu rise. At that time, apart from taking over West Kunlun and completely raising the banner of the devil cult, did Chu Xiu have any other choice? Chapter 990. After sending the others away, Chu Xiu also entered a state of retreat. He needed to digest some of the insights he gained from the fierce battle in the primitive demon cave. The consumption of using the blood demon transformation technique also needed to be repaired. Although Chu Xiu only used it for a short time, and he still had the eternal demon pill, so he didn't suffer too many injuries, there were still some after effects. During the time when Chu Xiu was in retreat, the entire underworld was not calm, and undercurrents were surging. There were two fundamental reasons. One was Yi Xiaonan, and the other was the righteous and demonic martial artists who were released from the deep pool. Yi Xiaonan got the demon seed, which had already made the righteous martial artists very afraid. No one knew to what extent Yi Xiaonan's strength would skyrocket after refining this legendary treasure. Therefore, most of the righteous sects were already extremely afraid of the moon-worshipping cult. Some people even wanted to explore the details of the moon-worshipping cult and attack the moon-worshipping cult when Yi Xiaonan was in retreat. The martial artists who were released from the deep pool also had a great impact on the situation of the entire underworld, especially the Dao lineage. The Buddhists were still fine. Yuan Guang from the Great Light Temple and an ascetic monk from the Sabodhi Monastery were trapped. For the Sabodhi Monastery, one more ascetic monk of the true fire spirit refinement realm was just a little more strength. It was not a big deal. As for Yuan Guang, 800 years ago, he once served as the head of the Vajra Monastery, but he later gave up his position. He was able to suppress the side effects of the furious Vajra Heart Sutra, and his personality was also very peaceful. Knowing that 800 years had passed, he naturally had no intention of fighting for power. He was just ready to use his last time to do his last bit of strength for the sect. Someone was also trapped in Dragon Tiger Mountain, but it was just a real pellet state martial artist. The strength of Dragon Tiger Mountain Daoist Master Mansion 800 years ago could be said to be really not too strong. Only the current Daoist Master could hold up the facade. Therefore, even in a place like the primitive demon cave, only a real pellet state martial artist could enter. However, for the pure Yang Dao sect and the true martial sect, the people who walked out of the two sects had powerful backgrounds. At this time, in the main hall of Chunyang Dao sect, a middle-aged Taoist priest in a white Taoist robe was reading through all the events that had happened in Chunyang Dao sect over the years. His face was dignified and cold, and anyone who saw him would feel their heart tremble. This middle-aged Daoist was the leader of the 6 Daoist masters of the Heavenly Dipper Hall 800 years ago, Yunmengzi. In terms of actual age, excluding the 800 years that he had been trapped here, Yunmengzi was younger than everyone else here. In fact, he was only slightly older than Shi Yunzi, not even 100 years old. The leader of this generation's 6 spiritual masters was Chang Yunzi, who had died at the hands of Chu Xiu. He was already close to 300 years old, a standard old man. As a result, Yunmengzi was able to serve as the leader of the 6 spiritual masters of Heavenly Dipper Hall in his prime. One could imagine how terrifying his talent and strength were. And this was also because he was accidentally trapped in the primitive demon cave. Otherwise, maybe the next generation or the generation after the Chunyang Dao sect's master would be him. At this time, Yunmengzi looked at the changes in strength of the Chunyang Dao sect in the past 800 years, and his expression became more and more ugly. Trash. All a bunch of trash. The foundation left behind by the ancestors had been ruined to such a state in just 800 years. It's fine that the true martial arts sect has Ningxuanji. My Dao sect has many heroes, and it's not surprising that there are powerhouses in any lineage. However, my Chunyang Dao sect was humiliated by Chu Xiu, that demonic cultivator. Even the leader of this generation's 6 spiritual masters died in his hands, and you all turned a blind eye to it. What is this? This is a disgrace. In the past, Yun Mengzi's era, the Chunyang Dao sect was still in its heyday. He, the leader of the 6 spiritual masters, was already so young. One could imagine how many older generation martial artists there were in the entire Chunyang Dao sect. It was not like now. Regardless of age, as long as one could reach the real pellet state, they were already the high-level combat power of the Chunyang Dao sect. At this time, listening to Yun Mengzi's angry scolding, Shi Yunzi's expression was very ugly. If their Chunyang Dao sect had the strength of 800 years ago, they would have cut Chu Xiu into pieces long ago. Would they still need to be looked down upon by you here? However, although he cursed in his heart, he didn't say it out loud because Yun Mengzi's identity was a little special. People like the Great Light Temple's Yuan Guang were actually very smart. 800 years had passed, and everything had changed. However, in these 800 years of stagnation, he didn't feel that his seniority had increased. So after returning to the Great Light Temple, he still did what he should do. However, Yun Mengzi was different. He happened to be Ling Yunzi's grandmaster. That's right, not the grandmaster of the entire sect, but the grandmaster of his lineage, a direct descendant. Therefore, this was a pain in the ass. If Yun Mengzi was just an ancestor of other Chunyang Dao sect, no matter how bad his temper was, he wouldn't dare to be so arrogant in front of Ling Yunzi, the sect master of Chunyang Dao sect, a powerhouse at the heaven and earth enlightenment state. However, he was the direct ancestor of Ling Yunzi's lineage. On the other hand, even if Ling Yunzi was the sect master, even if he was a powerhouse at the heaven and earth enlightenment state, he couldn't be disrespectful to him. Therefore, Ling Yunzi could only cough and say, "Grandmaster, no matter how weak our Chunyang Dao sect is, it won't be to this extent." After Chang Yunzi died, of course, we also took action. However, Chu Xiu has too many trump cards, so it's not that easy to deal with him. If we force our way through, it'll only cause both sides to suffer. Yun Mengzi sighed and said, 800 years have passed, and the world has changed. I didn't expect our Chunyang Dao sect to fall to such a state. We're being bullied by the demonic path. You should know that 800 years ago, those people from the Devil Dao would flee upon seeing the pure yang astral energy of our pure yang Dao sect. Shi Yunzi, who was at the side, pursed his lips. It should be said that the decline of the Chunyang Dao sect was unstoppable. This was because 500 years ago, a Dugu Weiwei had appeared. 800 years ago, you could make the demonic path flee, but after another 300 years, you can make Dugu Weiwei flee? Based on the Chunyang Dao sect's character, many people had died in the hands of the Kunlun devil cult 500 years ago. Therefore, it's good enough that the Chunyang Dao sect is still around. Why do they have so many demands? Yun Mengzi waved his hand and said, let's not care about the past for now. However, sect master, our Chunyang Dao sect can't continue to be so decadent now. Ling Yunzi nodded and said, I know that. Therefore, during this period of time, our Chunyang Dao sect has been recruiting disciples from all over the world to rebuild our strength. Previously, although we failed to establish a branch in northern Yen, we succeeded in recruiting many talented disciples. After training them successfully, they'll be of great use. Yun Mengzi waved his hand and said, how long will it take for the younger generation to grow? We're not so old that we can't fight. 10 years is too long, and 100 years is too long. Now, we can only seize the day. The power of our Chunyang Dao sect has always relied on the pure yang sword in our hands to kill demons. When the pure yang sword shines on the pugilistic world, will we still have to worry about not having disciples? That diabolism thief named Chu Xiu has killed so many people of our Chunyang Dao sect. How can we let go of this humiliation? This time, we'll start with him. Ling Yunzi's expression changed and he quickly said, Grandmaster. No. Chu Xiu is not a simple diabolism junior. In fact, the entire Hidden Devil clan respects him. It can be said that he's the leader of the Hidden Devil clan. Moreover, he has people in the heaven and earth mystic realm under him. Although I have the confidence to win, the others are no match for Chu Xiu. Especially now that he's entrenched in the northern Yen land. The new northern Yen emperor, Xiangli, was personally supported to the throne by him. He even admitted that in the northern Yen land, the Xiang royal family is in charge of the imperial court, and he, Chu Xiu, is in charge of the pugilistic world. Although Chu Xiu is only a junior in terms of age, in terms of power, he's already a veritable diabolism giant. He's second only to the moon-worshipping cults Yi Shaonan. We can't touch him easily. Yun Mengzi snorted and said, "Great devil?" In the past, countless great devils died under the sword of our Chunyang Dao sect. If we want to touch them, we should touch the great devils. If we touch those little devils, we'll lose face. Seeing that Ling Yunzi was about to say something, Yun Mengzi waved his hand and said, "Sect leader, do you think that I'm a stubborn old man who only knows how to fight and kill, and is impulsive and brainless?" Shi Yunzi continued to twitch his mouth. "Aren't you?" Ling Yunzi said, "Grand Master, that's not what I mean." Yun Mengzi snorted and said, "Sect leader, don't forget that I was also the leader of the 6 Temple Guardian Immortals in the past. I'm also qualified to join hands with the current sect leader to discuss some of the important matters of the Chunyang Dao sect. In the past, many important matters were facilitated by us. The methods of the diabolism are ruthless and cruel. To deal with the diabolism, you have to be more ruthless, more cruel, and more unscrupulous than them. Previously, when you besieged Chu Xiu, you were forced to retreat by Chu Xiu. Do you know why? Because you're not as ruthless as him. Don't worry, this time, I won't let the Chunyang Dao sect take the risk alone. The old man from the true martial arts cult has also been released. His temper is even more fiery than mine. Although I don't like that old man, he's still capable. Later, I'll go to the true martial arts cult to discuss with him and make a big move. In today's underworld, the diabolism has disappeared and the diabolism has risen. However, in this underworld, evil will never prevail over good. The previous actions of yours are simply child's play. It's fine if you don't take action, but once you take action, you'll crush all the diabolism demons with a thunderous force. Don't worry, sect leader. When I'm back, I'll give you an explanation. After that, Yun Mengzi walked out of the door directly, not even giving Ling Yunzi a chance to speak. Moreover, looking at the warriors of the Chunyang Dao sect in the main hall, they were all excited by Yun Mengzi's words. The Chunyang Dao sect had been used to being domineering since the beginning. Ling Yunzi had always wanted to reverse this situation, but he had never seen any results. In the end, when Yun Mengzi returned, his temper was very much to the taste of the people of the Chunyang Dao sect. Ling Yunzi sighed. He didn't know whether the outcome this time was good or bad. Chapter 991. Yun Mengzi was Ling Yunzi's grandmaster. This identity was already very awkward. However, the identity of the one from the real martial sect was even more awkward. The one who was released from the real martial sect was the sect leader of the real martial sect 800 years ago, Sage Qingchen, Han Jusi. In the 3 great Dao sects, the real martial sect had never been very strong until Ning Xuanji appeared 500 years ago. Therefore, when the primitive devil cave opened 800 years ago, he, the sect leader, personally went there. As a result, he was trapped there, causing the real martial sect to collapse. Perhaps it was because heroes could only be born in adversity. During the 300 years when Han Jusi disappeared, it was the most difficult period for the real martial sect. It was also under this pressure that Ning Xuanji appeared. However, now that Han Jusi had returned, Lu Chonglu was a little embarrassed. A sect could not have 2 sect leaders, right? Fortunately, although Han Jusi was a little hot-tempered, he was not the kind of person who only knew how to fight for fame and fortune. He did not care much about power and status. Therefore, before Lu Chonglu said anything, he took the initiative to give up his position. Lu Chonglu was still the sect leader. He could be an elder in the real martial sect and do his best for the sect. When Yunmengzi came to him and told him about his plan, Han Jusi's eyes lit up and he immediately said, "Of course, no problem. It's unbelievable that the righteous sects, especially the Dao sects, have been reduced to such a state, except for Dragon Tiger Mountain. After 800 years, we have finally reappeared in Jianghu. Maybe this is God's will, seeing that there is no one in the real martial sect and pure Yang sect, let us out." Lu Chonglu was also at the side at this time. When he heard this, he quickly stopped him and said, "Ancestor, and Taoist priest, the war between the righteous and demonic sects has just ended. The relationship between the righteous and demonic sects is very tense now. Everything needs to be done in the long run." Han Jusi waved his hand and said with some dissatisfaction, "Sect leader, you are good at everything, but your temperament is a little too soft. Since our true martial arts sect has such a powerful person like Ning Xuanji, even if he disappeared together with Dugu Weiwa, our true martial arts sect shouldn't be as powerful as it is now. Sometimes, it's natural to be more decisive when doing things. If every matter is discussed in the long run, the more problems there are, and in the end, there will be no movement." Yunmengzi said straightforwardly, "Headmaster Lu, you don't have to worry. We have a sense of propriety when we do things. If we don't have a certain degree of certainty, then it wouldn't be called resolute, but reckless. If it was in the past, Lu Chonglu would definitely not agree to such a thing. This was his character, and it was the same for the future development of the true martial arts sect. There was no harm in being careful. Since the true martial arts sect could produce a Ning Xuanji, they could naturally produce a second Ning Xuanji. As long as they could exist in the underworld, there would be countless opportunities. However, Han Jusi was also a sect leader in the past, so his thinking was different from his. Previously, Han Jusi had already taken a step back. Lu Chonglu also didn't want to see his fellow disciples kill each other. Therefore, he could only ask, "Does Daoist Master Yunmengzi have a general plan?" Yunmengzi's eyes narrowed as he said, "Of course there is a plan, and this plan not only includes us, but also includes the entire Eastern Qi, the entire righteous martial arts world. A thunderous strike is a fatal blow. If we don't make a big move, it will be meaningless if we still fight on a small scale like before." When Lu Chonglu heard about the general plan that Yunmengzi and Han Jusi had discussed, his eyes widened. He didn't know if Yunmengzi and the others had been imprisoned in the primitive devil cave for too long, and they were too stifled. Once they came out, they wanted to do something big. They felt that it was not enough to just have the Dao lineage or the righteous lineage take action. They also wanted to pull Eastern Qi to take action together. From a war between the righteous and demonic sects, it would become a world of chaos. Now that Chu Xiu had personally supported Northern Yen Xiongli to take the throne, the Northern Yen had already become a country protected by the demonic sections. Moreover, within the entire Northern Yen, there were very few Dao and Buddhist sections. There were almost no famous Dao sections. The Great Light Temple was in the Northern Yen, but it was in the extreme north, so it had almost no impact on the Northern Yen. In addition, the Northern Yen Emperor Xiongli had personally announced Chu Xiu as the supreme of the Northern Yen martial arts world. The entire Northern Yen had become a den of demons. At this time, if they didn't mobilize the Eastern Qi imperial court to take action, it would be a waste of the situation. Yunmengzi, Han Jusi, and the other Dao experts from 800 years ago, their way of doing things and vision were very different from the current martial artists. 800 years ago, the pugilistic world had yet to experience the Kunlun devil cult's unification of the pugilistic world. Therefore, the sects in the pugilistic world were flourishing. The righteous and the demonic sects attacked each other, and there were even some who became friends with each other. Moreover, the world 800 years ago was not like it was now. There were many small and large countries, and there were at least a dozen of them in total. At that time, there was no West Chu, and the northern Yen was only a small barbarian country in the north. Only Eastern Qi was slightly famous. However, the Eastern Qi emperor at that time did not have the surname Lu, but Jiang. Therefore, the sect masters of the martial arts world in that era, not to mention their strength, were much more generous in their way of doing things. They would easily ally with dozens of forces and set off waves of chaos. There was even a sect that controlled a small country. At that time, the distinction between the pugilistic world and the imperial court was not that clear. There was me in you, and you in me. It was very normal for them to join forces and attack each other. Based on Lu Changliu's character, he originally did not want to agree to this kind of thing. But with Han Jusi's insistence, he had no other choice. He could see that Han Jusi was also thinking for the sake of the true martial arts sect. Moreover, he had taken the initiative to concede to him. Moreover, Lu Changlu did not want to get into an argument with Han Jusi over this matter. Therefore, he had no choice but to agree. Together, they went to the great Liang city of Eastern Qi. Although the true martial arts sect was not as powerful as it was when Ning Xuanji was still around, in the Eastern Qi imperial court, the true martial arts sect was the most popular one. It was even stronger than the White Tiger Hall that had surrendered to the Eastern Qi imperial court. The true martial arts sect was the national religion of Eastern Qi. Any sacrificial ceremony in the Eastern Qi imperial court had to be carried out by the true martial arts sect. Even the imperial astronomer of the Eastern Qi imperial court was a disciple of the true martial arts sect. Therefore, when Lu Changlu came forward, Lu Haochang even came forward to greet him personally. Although in the eyes of the late Xiang Long, Lu Haochang was a mediocre good-for-nothing, it had to be said that Lu Haochang had lived a much better life than Xiang Long. He was a little older than Xiang Long, but Xiang Long had died of illness. Yet, he could still hold his concubines and have fun every night. The number of princes was already close to 3 digits. Seeing Lu Changlu coming, Lu Haochang laughed and greeted him. "Sage Lu, you haven't come to Great Liang City for a long time. This time, I have to entertain you well. And the 3 yuan internal cultivation scripture that Sage Lu passed on to me last time is very useful. You can practice for a quarter of an hour in the day, and you can persist for 2 hours at night. It's quite effective." Lu Changliu's face couldn't help but turn black when he heard this. He had given Lu Haochang the most orthodox Taoist basic internal strength to strengthen the body. It was used to help Lu Haochang prolong his life. In the end, he used it as an aphrodisiac. Yunmengzi and Han Jusi didn't think so much. 800 years ago, the sects had a very close relationship with the imperial court. Not to mention teaching this kind of cultivation method to the emperor, there were many who directly refined aphrodisiac for the emperor. Who are these two? Lu Changlu introduced, "This is Sage Yunmengzi of the Chunyang Dao sect. This is Sage Qing Chen of the True Martial sect." Lu Changlu didn't say in detail about the things that happened in the primitive Devil's Cave and what happened 800 years ago. Of course, there was no need to say it. It was enough for Lu Haochang to know their identity. After entering the hall, Lu Changlu didn't keep Lu Haochang in suspense. He directly told everything to Lu Haochang. After listening, Lu Haochang fell into silence. He didn't directly agree. It was true that Lu Haochang was mediocre, but he was only mediocre when compared to Xiang Long. Moreover, mediocre didn't mean that he was an incapable ruler. Lu Haochang had sat on the throne for several decades, and he still sat so stably. An incapable ruler wouldn't be able to do this. He might not be as capable or as decisive as Xiang Long, but his only advantage was his cautiousness. He wouldn't make a decision on such a major matter, even if the other party was the orthodoxy's true martial sect. Therefore, Lu Haochang directly evaded, we still can't make a decision on such a major matter. Everyone, please wait a moment. We will gather the officials to discuss this matter, and then we will give you an answer. At this moment, Yunmengzi suddenly said, "Can your majesty listen to a few words from this humble Daoist?" "Please, sage." Yunmengzi said in a low voice, "This matter doesn't just concern the conflict between the righteous and demonic branches of the Jianghu. In fact, it also involves the imperial court. Although Chu Xiu is still considered a junior, in reality, he has already taken control of the Yinma branch. In the demonic path, he is second only to Yi Shaonan. The Northern Yan Emperor was supported by Chu Xiu to ascend to the throne. The Northern Yan Emperor even said that in the Northern Yan Jianghu, Chu Xiu is the supreme ruler. The relationship between the two sides is already so close. Your Majesty should be able to see what this means. Therefore, if the demonic path rises and the Dao falls, it won't just be the demonic path that rises, but also the Northern Yan Imperial Court. If the Dao falls, it won't just be the righteous path that falls, but the Eastern Qi Imperial Court as well. Your Majesty, we need to plan ahead for this matter. We are not only here for ourselves, but also for the Central Plains warriors. Now that Eastern Qi has taken control of the Central Plains, once the demonic path controls the Northern Yan, the entire Central Plains will be plunged into misery and suffering." Hearing Yunmengzi's words, Lu Haochang was a little flustered. It was true that he was a mediocre emperor, but he was not a fatuous one. It was impossible for him to unify the world in his generation. He knew very well that he could not do such a thing. But even if he could not unify the world, the Eastern Qi's empire could not be lost in his hands, could he? Otherwise, how would he face his ancestors? Chapter 992. Lu Haochang was frightened by Yunmengzi's words. In fact, Yunmengzi was not trying to scare Lu Haochang, but 800 years ago, this kind of trick was very common. Perhaps Chu Xiu himself did not know that he used the people of Jianghu to support the crown prince in exchange for his own interests, which was actually very old-fashioned. After gathering all the officials, Lu Haochang told all these things to the officials of Eastern Qi. Finally, the officials of Eastern Qi also came to a conclusion. They agreed to the plan of Taoism. Yunmengzi's words were not alarmist talk, but it was indeed very possible. In the past, when Eastern Qi and Northern Yan fought, Xianglong relied on the power of Northern Yan Jianghu to turn the tables. But at that time, Xianglong only relied on a group of scattered Northern Yan Jianghu forces. And now, Northern Yan had the support of the entire Hidden Devil clan, which was much stronger than before. Regardless of whether Chu Xiu had this intention or not, his existence was a threat. And the officials of Eastern Qi actually had their own thoughts. Lu Haochang sought stability in mediocrity, but it did not mean that the people of Eastern Qi Imperial Court did not have the ambition to expand their territory. They sat on the rich and powerful Central Plains, but watched the rise of Northern Yan, and could not do anything to West Chu. For them, this was simply a shame and a waste. It was not easy for His Majesty to change his usual gentle attitude and was ready to take action. How could they refuse? When Eastern Qi was surging, Chu Xiu was still in a state of closed-door cultivation. Watching so many experts fight in the primitive demon cave, for Chu Xiu, it was not small. But the battle between Zhongshanxiu and Jun Wushan was the most important, but Chu Xiu was embarrassed to find that he could not understand it. It was only at this moment that Chu Xiu came to a sudden realization. The connection between him and Dugu Weiwei was much closer than he had imagined. Dugu Weiwei's strength was not as good as Zhongshanxiu's and Jun Wushan's. After all, Chu Xiu was not a person of this realm. He could not be sure who was stronger or weaker, but at least they should be on the same level. Chu Xiu had seen several illusions related to Dugu Weiwei. Every time, he would be able to comprehend something from it. Even if he couldn't understand it, he would still be able to learn it. For example, the blade intent of the word break. But watching the battle between Zhong Shenxiu and Jun Wuxian, Chu Xiu could only stare dumbfounded. There was nothing he could do. Of course, most of the martial artists present were dumbfounded. Even at Shang Tianliang's realm, he still couldn't understand the power of the battle between the two. This made Shang Tianliang constantly sigh after he came back. There was always someone stronger than him. Although his strength was several times stronger than when he was in LV-Do, he was still far from being complacent. At this moment, the door to Chu Xiu's seclusion chamber was suddenly knocked open. Mei Qinglian walked in with a dignified expression and said, "Eastern Qi has deployed troops to the border and is preparing to attack Northern Yen." Chu Xiu waved his hand indifferently and said, "Attack then attack. Haven't there been many conflicts between the two sides over the years?" Before, with Xiang Long around, Eastern Qi did not dare to act. After all, Xiang Long's prestige was still there. But now that Xiang Long is dead, Eastern Qi will definitely stir up a wave of trouble. This is normal. Although I helped Xiang Li ascend to the throne, the Northern Yen court still belongs to him. I am not his fighter. If he really can't hold on any longer, then it won't be too late to make a move. Mei Qinglian shook her head and said, "There is something wrong this time. Eastern Qi has deployed troops to the border not only to attack Northern Yen, but also to attack you." Chu Xiu frowned and said, "Me? What grudge do I have with Eastern Qi?" Mei Qinglian said, "You have no grudge with Eastern Qi, but you have a grudge with the righteous martial arts world. Do you know what slogan Eastern Qi used to launch a crusade against Northern Yen? They said that Northern Yen used you, a demon, to stir up chaos in the Northern Yen court and bring disaster to the people of the Northern Yen. They attacked Northern Yen to save the people of the Northern Land from the demon's wrath. Most importantly, this incident was started by Chunyang Dao sect and Real Martial Arts sect. The righteous martial arts world of Eastern Qi is full of support. Do you still think that this has nothing to do with you?" Chu Xiu frowned. This matter, of course, had something to do with him. It should be said that they came for him. But Chu Xiu was very confused. What was wrong with Chunyang Dao sect and Real Martial Arts sect? Why did they have to attack him at this time? Logically speaking, Yi Shaonan, who had obtained the demonic seed, should have attracted more hatred than him. Mei Qinglian said again, "The Northern Yen court is waiting for you to attend a meeting. I guess they are panicking." Chu Xiu nodded. He did not have time to think too much and headed straight for the Northern Yen Palace. At this time, in the Northern Yen Palace, besides Xiang Li, Xiang Chong, Beigong Bailey, and other members of the Northern Yen royal family, the military and other forces were also there. The army of Eastern Qi was pressing down on the Northern Yen. This was a very tricky matter for all the people in the Northern Yen. Although Northern Yen had won the war under the leadership of Xiang Long, this victory was actually only for himself. For Eastern Qi, it was not a serious loss at all. In the end, Eastern Qi did not continue the war because they did not want to suffer too much damage. Moreover, Lu Haochang was a steady character. If Northern Yen tore off a piece of his flesh, then so be it. Anyway, they could not kill him. Now that Eastern Qi had made a comeback, it was unknown whether Northern Yen could stop them again. Seeing that official Chu Xiu had finally arrived, Xiang Li hurriedly said, "Official Chu, please take a seat. Regarding the matter of Eastern Qi, do you have any thoughts, official Chu?" Xiang Li was panicking. He felt like crying, but no tears would come. It had not been easy for him to be the emperor. Before he ascended to the throne, he had gone through a bloody battle to get to this position. After becoming the emperor, Xiang Li did not have the time to enjoy power and other things. He had just ascended to the throne, and there were too many things for him to learn. He did not expect to be better than his father, Xiang Long, but he did not want to lose to Eastern Qi's Lu Haochang either. But before he could finish his work, the news that Eastern Qi was about to launch a large-scale attack came. This almost made Xiang Li cry. This was not the way to bully others. Xiang Long had been defeated by Eastern Qi for so many years, but none of them came to avenge him. Now, as soon as he became the emperor, they came to attack him. Picking the soft persimmon to bully? Xiang Chong snorted coldly and said, "Your Majesty, you're still asking him if he has any thoughts. Haven't you realized that Chu Xiu was the one who started this war? Diabolism is not tolerated in the pugilistic world. Chu Xiu had enjoyed enough glory in the pugilistic world and brought back a body full of hatred. In the end, the karma still fell on us Northern Yen." Although Xiang Chong had supported Xiang Li's ascension to the throne, and was even grateful that Chu Xiu did not take back his rights to the imperial worship hall, he still could not stand to see Chu Xiu. This was partly because of Xiang Long. Xiang Chong had never interacted with Chu Xiu before, but when Xiang Long was about to die, Xiang Long had spoken ill of Chu Xiu and was very wary of him. First impressions were the strongest. Coupled with his failure in the fight for the throne, it would be strange if Xiang Chong was friendly to Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu sneered and said, "Your Highness, you have a guilty conscience. Think about it. Even without me, Eastern Qi would not have attacked Northern Yen. When the late emperor was still around, Eastern Qi did not dare to act rashly because of the late emperor's reputation. But now that the late emperor is gone, have you ever thought that Eastern Qi would not make a move? The Northern Yen is not as strong as Eastern Qi. They will definitely join forces with the Northern Yen pugilistic world like the late emperor. When that time comes, won't I have to make a move? Moreover, Eastern Qi has already suffered once. Will they suffer again? Eastern Qi will definitely make use of the power of Eastern Qi's pugilistic world. Dao sect is the national religion of Eastern Qi. Do you think Chunyang Dao sect and martial arts sect will not make a move? No matter how you think about it, the result will be the same. Why should I, Chu Xiu, be the scapegoat? Chu Xiu's words reversed the cause and effect. There was nothing wrong with what he said. Everyone felt that it made sense. In fact, they did think that Eastern Qi would make a move after Xiang Long's death. They even took precautions for a period of time. However, during that period, Eastern Qi did not make any moves. Who knew that just when they relaxed a little, Eastern Qi had already deployed their troops at the border? But in fact, Eastern Qi's attack on Northern Yen was Chu Xiu's fault. The people of Northern Yen thought too highly of Lv Haochang. His greatest wish in this life was to sit firmly on the throne of the emperor. He would sit there without any achievements or mistakes until he died. He would leave the unification of the world to the next generation. Therefore, even after Xiang Long's death, he only threw a big banquet and slept with 3 new beauties. He did not do anything else after that. If it was not for Yun Mengzi and the others' encouragement, Eastern Qi would not have made a move. Xiang Chong glared at Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu's words were so reasonable that he did not know how to refute it. Xiang Li hurriedly tried to smooth things over. "Uncle, Official Chu, both of you are doing this for the good of Northern Yen. It is not a matter of who is responsible. But now that Eastern Qi's army is approaching our borders, we have to come up with a solution no matter what." Hearing Xiang Li's words, Xiang Chong did not continue to target Chu Xiu. But at the same time, he did not have any good ideas. He had spent most of his life in the Imperial Worship Hall, practicing martial arts. He did not care much about other things. He could kill people, but he was really not good at other things. Therefore, Xiang Li turned his eyes to Chu Xiu. He had great confidence in Chu Xiu. After all, this man had been through several wars between the righteous and the demonic, and had stirred up countless storms in the Jianghu. No one would doubt Chu Xiu's strength, let alone his ability. Chu Xiu thought for a moment, then said in a deep voice, "Different situations call for different measures. It is no big deal. Don't forget, the Northern Yen now is much stronger than the Northern Yen of decades ago. Back then, the Northern Yen was able to stop Eastern Qi. Why can't they do it now? Because of the involvement of the Jianghu, we have to deal with both the Jianghu and the battlefield at the same time. Leave the Jianghu to me, and the battlefield to General Bei Gong. Moreover, the policies that the former emperor made for the Northern Yen are the most suitable for the Northern Yen. There is no harm in using them again. Xiangli was puzzled. What policies? Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said, combine vertical and horizontal. Chapter 993. Chu Xiu's interests were now linked with the Northern Yen. In addition, Eastern Qi was obviously targeting Chu Xiu. At this time, Chu Xiu did not hold back and gave his advice to the Northern Yen wholeheartedly. The Northern Yen could not resist Eastern Qi alone. To resist Eastern Qi, they had to unite all the forces that could be united. Although Xiangli wasn't too smart, he wasn't stupid. He immediately reacted, West Chu. Chu Xiu nodded and said, yes, West Chu. Everyone knows that if the lips are gone, the teeth will be interdependent. As long as the Western Chu royal family is not an idiot, they should know what to choose at this time. Moreover, the former emperor is very far-sighted. He found the people of Jiangshan Pavilion and let them take over Wei Prefecture. They can also be used as a bridgehead to resist Eastern Qi. In this way, the three forces will be more powerful than 10 years ago. At this time, Xiangli smiled bitterly and said, Jiangshan Pavilion can't be counted on. Father is good at everything, but he miscalculated one thing, and that is Jiangshan Pavilion's shamelessness. Just now, news came that Jiangshan Pavilion has officially established a country in Wei Prefecture, called the State of Wei. But this State of Wei is not the State of Wei that favors our Northern Yen, but the State of Wei of Eastern Qi. These bastards betrayed us and chose to rely on Eastern Qi. When Chu Xiu heard this, he was only a little surprised, but not too surprised. Jiangshan Pavilion's choice was not strange. A good bird chooses a good tree to nest in. Jiangshan Pavilion knew what Northern Yen was thinking. It was nothing more than using them as meat shields to resist Eastern Qi. But now, Eastern Qi also promised Jiangshan Pavilion that they could establish a country, and Eastern Qi was more powerful than Northern Yen. In this case, what advantage did Northern Yen have? It should be said that when Xiang Long led Jiangshan Pavilion to Wei Prefecture, he should have thought of this. But he didn't know whether Xiang Long's brain was damaged before he died, or he overestimated the power of Northern Yen, which led to this result. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, everyone has the right to choose a side. Jiangshan Pavilion and Eastern Qi have their own reasons in the end. Now, it doesn't matter if Jiangshan Pavilion is 1 or 2, it doesn't matter if Jiangshan Pavilion is 1 or 2. It takes time to form alliances. During this period of time, we'll have to see if General Bei Gong can hold them off. Bei Gong Bailey said in a deep voice, the 5 armies are ready to set off at any time. Don't worry, we aren't that useless. We won't be easily defeated by Eastern Qi. Xiang Chong was annoyed to see Chu Xiu giving orders, but he couldn't do anything about it. He wasn't good at this, and Bei Gong Bailey was a general. The battlefield was his real game. Xiangli had just ascended the throne, and he was still in a daze. Xiang Chong might not even dare to carry out his orders. It could be said that Chu Xiu was the most qualified to speak about the world situation. Chu Xiu nodded and said, if that's the case, then choose someone with enough weight and eloquence to go to Western Chu and seek an alliance. Who was the one who made the alliance between Northern Yen and Western Chu? Xiang Chong said with a strange expression, it was the poison dragon warrior Yang Gongdu, but he should be dead. Chu Xiu also had a strange expression on his face. Of course he knew that Yang Gongdu was dead, and he had died right in front of him. That fellow might not be able to see the situation clearly, but he had a powerful mouth. If he made a move, it would be easy to convince Western Chu. Chu Xiu pondered for a moment before saying, "Then, Your Highness, you should go on this trip. This is a good errand, and Your Highness' status is sufficient." Xiang Chong's face was slightly red as he said, "This king isn't good with words. If I can't explain myself clearly, it will ruin things." Xiang Chong had spent most of his time cultivating in the Imperial Consecrator Hall, so he really couldn't handle this kind of task. Xiang Li suggested, "How about this, Official Chu and Imperial Uncle will handle this matter together. Uncle can represent the Northern Yen court, and Official Chu can represent the Northern Yen society. If the lips died, the teeth would be cold. If the West Chu court was finished, the West Chu Jianghu would not be easy to survive. After all, that was the area with the loosest management of the Jianghu. Official Chu, you and moon-worshipping Cultivation Xiaonan are both from the demonic path. If you can convince the moon-worshipping cult to make a move, wouldn't that be even better?" Chu Xiu looked at Xiang Li with a strange expression. He wasn't stupid, he had actually learned to draw inferences. Convincing a portion of the demonic path in Western Chu society to make a move wasn't a problem, but the other side was the moon-worshipping cult, so Chu Xiu didn't dare say he would succeed. It was best for the weak not to guess the thoughts of the strong because you haven't reached that level yet, so you don't know what the strong are thinking. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "No problem, but before we go to Western Chu, we still need to take care of the Northern Yen." Xiang Li was stunned and said, "What else does the Northern Yen need to take care of?" Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "The bald donkeys from the Great Light Temple are still in the north. If they suddenly make a move, we will be caught off guard. So, we need to take care of the Great Light Temple first before we go to Western Chu." Xiang Li immediately said, "Official Chu, how do you plan to take care of the Great Light Temple? The court will definitely cooperate." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "No need. This time, I'm not going to fight the Great Light Temple to the death. I can take care of it in a short time." After all the arrangements were made, the Northern Yen court immediately began to move. When it came to a war that could destroy a country, no one dared to look down on it. Even the lowest soldier had his nerve stretched taut. Chu Xiu called for Shang Tianliang and the others to cause trouble for the Great Light Temple. However, when Chu Xiu went to hurt Shang Tianliang looked at Chu Xiu warily and said, "Brat, are you done yet? Do you really want to make use of this old man's remaining value completely? I can't beat the old monk Su Ci from the Great Light Temple. No matter what you say, I can't beat him." Chu Xiu smiled faintly and said, "Is City Lord Shang admitting defeat? A heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm powerhouse is admitting defeat before the fight even starts. That's not nice to hear." Shang Tianliang snorted and said, "If I can't beat him, then I can't beat him. What's so embarrassing about that? The Great Light Temple's inheritance is right there. The old monk Su Ci's strength is probably even stronger than my Shang clan's ancestors. It's not embarrassing if I can't beat him." Perhaps because Shang Tianliang had grown up in Green Capital, he had never placed much importance on things like reputation and honor. To him, reputation and honor were not as important as a piece of cornbread. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Don't worry, I'm not asking you to risk your life this time. I'm just pulling you along to boost my momentum. With the Dao sect working together with Eastern Qi's army, how can I fight to the death with the Great Light Temple at this time?" Shang Tianliang looked at Chu Xiu suspiciously. "How could I not die if I went out with you?" Shang Tianliang was seriously doubtful about this. Also, he suspected that Chu Xiu's life was filled with malice, which was why his killing intent was so strong. He should ask Yuan Ji for help. However, with Master Yuan Ji's personality, even if he did, he would definitely say that Chu Xiu had an unparalleled immortal life providence. When Chu Xiu brought his people to the Great Light Temple, the Great Light Temple had also heard about the news about Eastern Qi. Eastern Qi had caused such a huge commotion that it had triggered a war. This was no longer just a storm in the pugilistic world. In the Great Strengths Hall, Su Yun frowned and said, "I've underestimated Ling Yunzi and Lu Chonglu. I didn't expect them to be so generous." Yuan Guang said, "In my opinion, this isn't the decision of the two current sect masters. It's the handiwork of Yunmengzi and Han Jusi." Yunmengzi used to be the head of the 6 spiritual masters of the Chunyang Dao sect. He was the one who had the hope of taking over the position of sect master. Meanwhile, Han Jusi was the sect master of the true martial sect 800 years ago. Both of them have bad tempers, but at the same time, they are very decisive in their actions. Their plans are extremely generous. Hearing Yuan Guang say this, Su Ci and Su Yun looked at each other and nodded lightly without anyone noticing. It was fortunate that the Great Light Temple had sent out Yuan Guang, a senior who had retired 800 years ago. He did not fight for the position. Otherwise, it would be troublesome. Su Jing said, "If that's the case, what should the Great Light Temple do? There's no news from the Dao sect." Yuan Guang smiled bitterly and said, "According to what I know about them, they won't send you any news. Especially Yun Mengzi. 800 years ago, the Chunyang Dao sect was very powerful. They were best at suppressing people with their power. Now that the Eastern Qi is ready, they are going to attack the Northern Yan imperial court that worships demons. The righteous and the demonic cannot coexist. Everything is in front of us. How can we turn a blind eye to it?" The few people present frowned. Indeed, the Dao sect not contacting them now was the most troublesome thing. Wasn't the Buddhist lineage also known as the supreme sect of the righteous martial arts world? Moreover, they wanted to annihilate the demonic path right at their doorstep. Yet, they just stood there and watched. Even if the Great Light Temple had the nerve to do so, this would be one of the blemishes that they would be mocked by the Dao sect in the future. It would ruin their reputation. Just as everyone was still in a dilemma, a young novice monk suddenly walked in, looking slightly flustered. "Abbot. First seat. This is bad. Chu Xiu has brought a group of subordinates and is heading straight for the Great Light Temple. They're already up the mountain." Hearing this, everyone's expression darkened. Arrogant. Too arrogant. Now, Chu Xiu still has a huge problem on his hands. "We haven't even decided whether or not to find trouble with you, yet you dare to send yourself to our doorstep? Do you have a death wish?" Just as everyone was about to leave, Su Jing suddenly said, "Senior Abbot, be careful." Su Ci nodded. He knew what Su Jing meant. Even if Chu Xiu combined all the forces in his hands, he would not be a threat to the Great Light Temple. However, Chu Xiu had taken the initiative to find trouble with the Great Light Temple before his own troubles came. He, Chu Xiu, was either crazy or he had something to rely on. Based on Chu Xiu's personality, it was most likely the latter. Chapter 994. In front of the main entrance of the Great Light Temple, Chu Xiu's group of experts stood there arrogantly, as though they were on a sightseeing tour. It was not easy to observe the Great Light Temple of the Northern Buddhist sect at such a close distance. However, at this moment, the Great Light Temple's cultivators guarding the gate were looking at Chu Xiu and the others warily. Their faces showed that they were not afraid of death. Clearly, if Chu Xiu and the others dared to do anything like barging into the mountain gate, they would really dare to charge forward and risk their lives. The gate was slowly pushed open. Su Ci and the others walked out and looked at Chu Xiu unkindly. Su Yan was the first to say coldly, "Chu Xiu, what are you doing here at the Great Light Temple?" Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Your Temple of Great Light is not some dragon's lair or tiger's den, so why can't I come?" Su Yan snorted. "Chu Xiu, don't be sarcastic here. Taoism is working together with Eastern Qi to suppress the Northern Yan. You are in trouble now. Are you here at the Great Light Temple just to enjoy the scenery?" Chu Xiu's expression turned serious and he said in a low voice, Master Su Yan is right. I am here at the Great Light Temple because of this matter. The people from the Great Light Temple were stunned. Taoism is working together with Eastern Qi to suppress the Northern Yen. What are you doing here at the Great Light Temple? Su Yan sneered. Are you here to tell us that Taoism and Buddhism are at odds with each other so that we can help you? If you have such thoughts, I advise you to go back. Although we read scriptures every day, we have not read to the point where our minds are muddled. Chu Xiu shook his head. Of course I want the Great Light Temple to do this, but unfortunately, you won't. On the contrary, I am worried that the Great Light Temple will attack the Martial Suppression Hall. So today, I came first. After all, it is better to attack first than to attack later. Hearing this, the people from the Great Light Temple wanted to break their vows and curse. They had never heard of such a ridiculous reason. Just because you are worried that the Great Light Temple will attack you, you came first. What is this? Persecutory delusion? There are always people who want to harm me? The Temple of Great Light was not the one who started this incident. In fact, they were still discussing whether or not they should make a move just now. They had yet to make up their minds. Su Ci said, Chu Xiu, what are you trying to do? Just because of such a ridiculous reason, you personally brought your people and came to my Temple of Great Light in such an aggressive manner? Chu Xiu said solemnly, Abbot Su Ci, this reason isn't funny at all. On the contrary, it's very important. To fend off foreign aggression, we must first stabilize the internal situation. I am currently resisting Eastern Qi and Haotian Taoism. If someone stabs me in the back, who am I going to ask for justice? Chu Xiu's bold and confident words almost made Su Ci laugh in anger. Then tell me, what is the meaning of your visit? Don't tell me you want to destroy the Great Light Temple prematurely? Chu Xiu shook his head. Of course not. The Bodhi Yard of the Great Light Temple has countless experts from the older generation. I can't destroy the Great Light Temple with just these few people. No one in the pugilistic world can destroy the Great Light Temple either. I'm here to ask for a promise from the Great Light Temple. What promise? Chu Xiu squinted. A promise that in this incident, the Great Light Temple will remain neutral and will not attack. We will also have to swear to Buddha. Monks don't lie, not to mention that I've made a vow to Buddha. Su Ci said coldly, impossible. The Great Light Temple will not give you any promises. Chu Xiu, you're forcing the Great Light Temple again. Perhaps the Great Light Temple wouldn't have made a move before, but now, the Great Light Temple doesn't mind making a move. Putting aside the fact that the Great Light Temple had not made up their mind to attack, even if they had made up their mind not to get involved, they would not give Chu Xiu any promises. Since when did the Great Light Temple, one of the Buddhist sects in the north and south, have to make a promise to someone from the demonic path? Chu Xiu's words completely infuriated Su Ci. He took a step forward, and his body shone with Buddhist light. That powerful aura shot into the sky, and one could vaguely hear the sound of Buddhist chanting in midair. The evil moon saber was held in Chu Xiu's hand, and the inner demon was suppressing the power of the evil moon saber. In that instant, a violent demonic aura swept through the sky. The sky was clear, but the shadow of a moon was reflected in the sky. It was a blood moon. Seeing the confrontation between the two, Shang Tianliang cursed in his heart. Like hell I'll believe you. Previously, this Chu Xiu had promised him that he would not attack this time, but now he had come to provoke him. Wasn't he still going to attack? However, this time, Chu Xiu did not attack directly. Instead, he suppressed the power of the evil moon saber and said with a smile, Master Su Ci, don't be so agitated. I've already experienced your martial arts in the primitive demon cave, and I don't want to experience it again. I'm not asking the Great Light Temple for this promise for free. I'm offering something in exchange. Seeing Chu Xiu restrain his saber, Su Ci also restrained some of his power. He asked, "What are you offering?" Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "I'll use the lives of 27,396 Buddhist monks in the northern Yan kingdom to trade." "What did you say?" This time, not only Su Ci, but all the warriors from the Great Light Temple released a powerful aura, as if they wanted to swallow Chu Xiu alive. Chu Xiu said coldly, "Masters, don't be so agitated. How do you usually address me, Chu Xiu? Is it the demonic Dao villain? Since I've become a demonic Dao villain, I have to live up to this name. What is the demonic Dao? Despicable, shameless, cruel, murderous, committed all kinds of bad things, and committed all kinds of crimes. Am I right? But this time, I didn't provoke the Dao sect. In the end, not only did the Dao sect want to suppress me, but they also want to destroy the foundation that I've built in the northern Yan for so many years. My principle, Chu Xiu, is that whoever makes life difficult for me, I'll make life difficult for them. Next, I will use all my strength to face the pressure from Eastern Qi and the Dao sect. There can be no mistakes in the future. So, the Great Light Temple has to give me this promise, even if you don't want to. If you really don't give it to me, with an order from me, the Blue Dragon Society's assassins in the northern Yan will immediately pluck the bald heads of 27,396 Buddhist monks in the northern Yan territory. The Great Light Temple will be responsible for all of this. Also, the northern Yan court will issue a decree to exterminate the Buddhists in the northern Yan territory. Anyone who believes in Buddhism will be exiled to the bitter cold of the far north. Anyone who secretly hides Buddhist scriptures will be punished with treason. Master Su Ci, do you believe that in this way, there will be no trace of your Buddhist lineage in the entire northern Yan within a month? When that time comes, all of you will be the sinners of the Buddhists. When Chu Xiu said this, everyone in the Great Light Temple turned pale. It was as if they wanted to skin Chu Xiu alive. Even Shang Tianliang looked at Chu Xiu in shock. This move was truly sinister. They had seen wicked people, but they had never seen someone so wicked. As the Great Light Temple was close to the northern Yan territory, the northern Yan Dao sect's influence was not strong. On the contrary, there were still some small temples. Although these people were not from the Great Light Temple, they were all disciples of the Buddhists. They came from the same source. That was the lives of more than 20,000 Buddhist disciples. How could the Great Light Temple ignore it? In addition, once the Northern Yan court issued the decree to exterminate the Buddhists, the foundation that the Great Light Temple had spent thousands of years building in the Northern Yan territory would be destroyed in a month's time. After a long while, Su Ci squeezed out a few words from between his teeth, "Chu Xiu. Don't you dare." Chu Xiu held his saber and said expressionlessly, "You'll see if I dare." "Master Su Ci, if you have the guts, then make a bet. Or you can leave me in the Great Light Temple right now. The choice is in your hands." Su Ci, who had always appeared to be extremely calm, was so angry that his heart trembled. After a while, he gritted his teeth and said, "I swear to Buddha that during the time when Eastern Qi and Taoism are attacking Northern Yan, the Temple of Great Light will seal off the mountain. Not a single monk will come out. Are you satisfied now?" Chu Xiu put away his saber and smiled again. "Satisfied, of course I'm satisfied. Master Su Ci, you're decisive. I'm impressed. If that's the case, I won't disturb you any longer." After that, Chu Xiu waved his hand and led his people down the mountain. After Chu Xiu and the others left, Su Yan was so angry that he was shaking. He could not even speak. Su Jing said coldly, "Shameless." Su Yun snorted and said, "They deserve to die." Yuan Guang sighed and said, 800 years ago, this poor monk had never seen such a shameless and despicable demonic cultivator. The morals of the world are degenerating, and people are not what they used to be. 800 years ago, even the demonic cultivators had to follow the rules. Why has it become like this now? Beside him, Shudu pursed his lips and said, most people from the demonic path follow the rules. Chu Xiu is the only one who doesn't. Otherwise, why do you think he has such strength and influence at such a young age? Those who aren't as strong as him have been beaten to death. Those who aren't as shameless as him have been tricked to death by him. Su Ci said nothing with a dark expression. He only waved his hand and said, seal the mountain. This time, the Great Light Temple would definitely suffer a loss. There was no point in saying anything more. Chu Xiu could be shameless, but the Great Light Temple could not. They could not ignore the lives of the other monks, and the foundation of the Buddhist lineage in the northern Yen could not be lost either. Therefore, they could only lower their heads. Meanwhile, at the foot of the mountain, Shang Tianliang shook his head slightly and said, Chu Xiu, kid, this move of yours is not just any ordinary sneaky move. Those monks from the Great Light Temple will definitely fight you to the death in the future. Moreover, you can only use this move once. I'm afraid it won't work a second time. The people of the Great Light Temple were not idiots. After this incident, they would definitely make arrangements for the Buddhist disciples in the northern Yen territory. They would not be threatened by Chu Xiu like this again. Moreover, after this incident, the Great Light Temple would definitely hate Chu Xiu to the core. If there was another opportunity like this, they would definitely not hesitate and would directly make a move. Chapter 995. Chu Xiu did not underestimate the Great Light Temple and knew the consequences of offending the Great Light Temple. However, for the current Chu Xiu, even if he did not completely offend the Great Light Temple now, it would be the same in the future. Hearing Shang Tianliang say that the Great Light Temple would definitely not rest until he was dead, Chu Xiu said lightly, it doesn't matter. The righteous and the demonic are opposed. In the future, if I decide to return to the Kunlun Devil cult, the Great Light Temple will still want to tear me into pieces. Anyway, it will happen sooner or later. I just brought this matter forward. Shang Tianliang and the others thought about it carefully. What Chu Xiu said was quite reasonable. Anyway, there were many people in the pugilistic world who wanted to tear him into pieces. The Great Light Temple did not make much of a difference. After dealing with the Great Light Temple, Chu Xiu prepared to go to West Chu with Xiang Chong to meet the moon-worshipping cult and the West Chu royal family. This kind of matter did not require a lot of people, so the people from the Jianghu Hall, including Shang Tianliang, were arranged by Chu Xiu to stay in the northern Yen to deal with accidents. He and Xiang Chong went all the way to West Chu. Chu Xiu and Xiang Chong did not like each other, so the two of them did not communicate much along the way. Moreover, now that the situation had reached such a critical point, they did not have the mood to chat on the road. They rushed to West Chu as fast as they could. However, after arriving at West Chu, Xiang Chong wanted to find the West Chu royal family first, while Chu Xiu was prepared to find the moon-worshipping cult first. The two of them had a dispute on this point. Chu Xiu said lightly, Your Highness, the last time the northern Yen joined forces with West Chu to fight against eastern Qi, how much effort did West Chu put in? Xiang Chong frowned and said, Last time, the West Chu imperial court didn't play tricks. But with their strength, even if they didn't play tricks, their strength is still limited. So last time against eastern Qi, it was our northern Yen who was the main attacker. As for the West Chu imperial court, they mainly restrained the power of eastern Qi. Why do you ask? Chu Xiu softly said, The West Chu court strength can be seen here. They can't be weak, but they can't be considered strong either. But the moon-worshipping cult's strength is certainly strong enough. Moreover, Your Highness should know the status of the moon-worshipping cult in the West Chu land. As long as he dealt with the moon-worshipping cult first, the West Chu imperial court would be much simpler. Moreover, Your Highness, please don't forget that our opponents this time are not only eastern Qi, but also the forces of the righteous martial arts world. Xiang Chong couldn't beat Chu Xiu in this matter. Since Chu Xiu said so, he had to agree to go to the moon-worshipping cult first. Chu Xiu had been to the moon-worshipping cult once before. It was during the war between the righteous and demonic forces. But that time, everyone just fought outside and didn't go inside to watch. This time, when Chu Xiu came, after reporting his name, Donghuang Tai, the moon-worshipping cult's high priest, and the moon-worshipping cult saintess personally came to greet him. With Chu Xiu's current strength and status, he was qualified to receive this kind of treatment. Donghuang Tai still had some injuries that hadn't healed. When fighting for the demon seed, he burned his blood essence to help Yi Xiaonan get the demon seed. This kind of consumption couldn't be recovered in a short time. As for the moon-worshipping cult's high priest, Chu Xiu didn't have many dealings with him, but he heard that he was low-key and mysterious. Among them, the one that Chu Xiu had the most dealings with was the moon-worshipping cult saintess. But after seeing her, Chu Xiu stared at her. Of course, Chu Xiu had never seen a beautiful woman before. He was just curious about the current state of the moon-worshipping cult saintess. She was actually still in the unity of heaven and man state. Most of the martial artists who entered the Longhu list with Chu Xiu had now stepped into the real pellet state. If it was someone else, it would be normal even if their strength was weak, but it was the moon-worshipping cult saintess. The moon-worshipping cult saintess chuckled and said, "Why is official Chu staring at me? Are you interested in me? If it's others, I will definitely refuse. If it's you, official Chu, I can consider it." Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Even if I want to, Master Yi won't be willing. The moon-worshipping cult saintess won't be abducted by an outsider." After making a joke, Chu Xiu walked into the moon-worshipping cult under the lead of Donghuang Tai and the moon-worshipping cult's high priest. Following behind Chu Xiu, Xiang Chong was a little upset. When he was in the northern Yen, he didn't feel that he was worse than Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu had the Jianghu Hall, and he also had the Royal Consecrator Hall. Chu Xiu had the hidden demon lineage, and he was also the Northern Yen Lord. Chu Xiu was powerful. Although he couldn't defeat him, with the 9-dragon seal, he still had the power to fight. But as soon as the result came out, the difference was obvious. Chu Xiu's current reputation was built by him. As a demon, even the moon-worshipping cult, the current leader of the demon, would not neglect Chu Xiu. In addition to Yi Xiaonan, the 3 high-level officials came out to greet him, and their attitude was also very polite. As for Xiang Chong, although he wasn't ignored, it was obvious that those in the moon-worshipping cult didn't take him seriously. As a Northern Yen Lord, what achievements did he have outside of the Northern Yen? The people of Jianghu recognized the fist, not the identity of the Northern Yen royal family. Xiang Chong followed Donghuang Tai and the others into the moon-worshipping cult. The scenery along the way was extremely beautiful. The scenery was pleasant, and even some of the buildings were designed in a very novel way. It was as if they were one with the scenery, and Xiang Chong was slightly surprised. Previously, he always thought that the interior of a big demon sect like the moon-worshipping cult must be extremely gloomy. Who would have thought that it was like a paradise on earth? Moreover, the disciples of the moon-worshipping cult didn't have the gloomy feeling of ordinary demon martial artists. Instead, the men were handsome, and the women were fair and beautiful. This made Xiang Chong secretly wonder. Could it be that the moon-worshipping cult chose disciples based on appearance first? At the sacred lake in the center of the moon-worshipping cult, Yi Xiaonan sat in a pavilion by the lake, waiting for Chu Xiu and the others. Previously, when Yi Xiaonan obtained the demon seed, Chu Xiu thought that he should be in a state of closed-door training. But now, it seemed that Yi Xiaonan wasn't in seclusion. Was he not in a hurry to refine the demon seed? As he thought about it, Chu Xiu and Xiang Chong walked over and cupped their hands. "Greetings, hierarchy." Yi Xiaonan looked at Chu Xiu, and Chu Xiu also looked at Yi Xiaonan. At this moment, both of them paused at the same time. This was the first time that Chu Xiu officially met the #1 demon in the world, and Yi Xiaonan had naturally heard of Chu Xiu's name. In fact, according to the standpoint of the two sides, the two should be hostile. However, with the pressure of the righteous sects, even if the demon lineage wasn't in the same camp, they wouldn't kill each other at this time. The two sides didn't have any hostility when they met. But at this moment, Yi Xiaonan suddenly said, "That stone that looks like a knife, what is it?" Dong Wang Tai felt embarrassed when he heard Yi Xiaonan suddenly ask such a question. Hierarchy was too straightforward. How could this kind of thing be asked face to face? Even if it was out of curiosity, it was good to beat around the bush. Moreover, why would Chu Xiu say it? Chu Xiu was also stunned when he heard Yi Xiaonan say this, but then he reacted. Yi Xiaonan didn't ask this because he coveted his stone knife, nor did it contain any other meaning. It was purely out of curiosity. Chu Xiu didn't believe in Yi Xiaonan's character, but he believed in Yi Xiaonan's pride. If Yi Xiaonan was really interested in the stone knife and wanted to snatch it, his first reaction would definitely be to directly snatch it instead of probing. With his strength, there was no point in being secretive like this. Therefore, Chu Xiu paused and said directly, "That is a knife embryo condensed from the dragon vein of the demon dragon. Only the rootless sacred flame can refine it into a knife." In the past, before Dugu Weiwei's listen to spring rain was refined, it was also this kind of knife embryo. Dong Wang Tai and the others suddenly gasped. They didn't expect that the seemingly unremarkable stone knife had such a great origin. It was actually an existence of the same origin as the demonic knife listened to spring rain. Of course, what surprised them even more was that Chu Xiu actually said it after Yi Xiaonan asked this question. They really couldn't understand these two people. Yi Xiaonan wasn't surprised. He just nodded and said, "So that's how it is." His curiosity had been satisfied. Moreover, not to mention that what Chu Xiu obtained was only a knife embryo, even if it was the complete listen to spring rain, Yi Xiaonan wouldn't be interested. The crescent blade in his hand was a magic weapon that he had personally forged. The tool spirit was unusually compatible with him. No matter how good listen to spring rain was, it wasn't his knife. "Why did you come to moon-worshipping cult this time?" Yi Xiaonan asked. Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "I think you all already know what happened in Eastern Qi. The Dao lineage joined forces with the Eastern Qi imperial court to attack Northern Yen, but in fact, their target is me. I didn't expect the Orthodox lineage, especially the Dao lineage, to have this kind of courage. Therefore, this time, I also want to ask moon-worshipping cult to help." Yi Xiaonan didn't speak. He pondered for less than 3 breaths of time and only spat out a word, "Yes." Xiang Chong, who was standing to the side, stared with his eyes wide open. What was going on? Previously, he was still thinking about how Chu Xiu should use his glib tongue to persuade Yi Xiaonan to help. In the end, Chu Xiu only made clear his purpose of coming, and the other party actually agreed. Wasn't this too simple? If he had known it was so simple, he probably wouldn't have needed Chu Xiu to come this time. He could have done it himself. East Emperor Tai and the High Priest also didn't expect Yi Xiaonan to agree so quickly. They were just about to say something when Yi Xiaonan knocked on the table and spat out 4 words, "Without the lips, the teeth will be cold." Yi Xiaonan agreed so quickly not because he didn't use his brain, nor because Chu Xiu had a big face, but because of these 4 words. In the past, when moon-worshipping cult was besieged by the orthodox martial arts world as a target, whether it was the time when the two sides joined forces at Fuyu, or when Yi Xiaonan went out of seclusion to attack the orthodox, although the Immortal lineage asked for some benefits, they also took action. This time, Yi Xiaonan agreed so quickly because of these 4 words. The bright devil and the hidden devil were both devils. This time, they turned a blind eye. Next time, they would be the unlucky ones. Chapter 996. As for Yi Xiaonan, it was very difficult for Chu Xiu to describe him. Although he came from the number 1 demonic path sect and had single-handedly raised the moon-worshipping cult to its current peak, in reality, Yi Xiaonan didn't have much of the demonic path style. In Chu Xiu's opinion, Yi Xiaonan wasn't ruthless enough or despicable enough. Of course, he wouldn't be indecisive or soft-hearted. In terms of doing things, he had always used the identity of the moon-worshipping cult's leader to carry out various plans with absolute rationality. However, when it came to being a person, he wasn't a sect master, nor was he a demon. If Chu Xiu were to insist, Yi Xiaonan should only be a martial artist, a pure martial artist. Perhaps it could be said that when one reached his realm, they were fully deserving of the title of powerhouse. Yi Xiaonan wasn't a martial maniac, but he was tireless in his pursuit of power. It was because of this that he was able to successfully cultivate the Heaven-Mending Heart Sutra and become the number 1 demonic path cultivator. It was very difficult to become an opponent with such a person because the other party had no weaknesses. Unless you could completely defeat the other party in terms of strength, you wouldn't be able to defeat the other party. But it was much easier to become an ally with such a person. As long as you didn't play tricks and put the interests of all sides on the table, Yi Xiaonan would naturally make the most suitable choice for the moon-worshipping cult. Before coming to West Chu, Chu Xiu had already expected this. As long as he clearly said everything, with Yi Xiaonan's personality, he would naturally know what to choose. But at this time, Yi Xiaonan said, the moon-worshipping cult will make a move, but the moon-worshipping cult will not leave West Chu. Xiang Chong's expression couldn't help changing. What was the point of not leaving West Chu? What was the difference between agreeing and not agreeing? But then Yi Xiaonan said, similarly, none of the righteous sects in the land of West Chu will leave West Chu. Chu Xiu nodded and said, it is enough for the moon-worshipping cult to do this. This one is very grateful. Xiang Chong rubbed his head. Only now did he understand what Yi Xiaonan meant. There were quite a few righteous sects in West Chu. Just the Celestial Master Mansion was the biggest threat. There was also the Forgetting Sword Hut and the Storm Sword Tomb. Although the Chunyang Dao sect and the real martial arts order were the ones who started the fight, they were fighting in the name of killing the demons. It was hard to guarantee that the other righteous sects would not take action. This was also the reason why Chu Xiu had forced the Great Light Temple to make a promise. As long as the moon-worshipping cult could stop the righteous forces of West Chu, it would be a great help to Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu said at this time, that's right, this time I came to West Chu not only to ask the moon-worshipping religion to help, but also to contact the West Chu royal family. I also want to inquire about the relationship between the West Chu royal family and the moon-worshipping cult. Which side will they stand on? Now that the two sides had decided to join forces, Donghuang Tai and the high priest of the moon-worshipping cult treated Chu Xiu and his companion better. Hearing this, East Emperor Tai said, West Chu royal family? That's hard to say. You know the situation in West Chu. The martial arts world is chaotic and the power of the imperial court is very weak. It is so weak that the words of the imperial court are not as effective as the big sects in the martial arts world. They even often ask us for help to deal with the martial arts world's affairs. So the relationship between the West Chu royal family and the martial arts world is not that tense. It should be said that they have a good relationship with everyone. The West Chu royal family's imperial astronomer is a priest from the Celestial Master Mansion. Every year, the emperor will go to the Celestial Master Mansion to pray for blessings. If they were not afraid of offending the moon-worshipping cult, the West Chu royal family would be willing to let the Celestial Master Mansion become the national religion. But at the same time, the people of the moon-worshipping cult have some privileges in West Chu. Many of the imperial doctors in the palace are disciples of the moon-worshipping cult. Chu Xiu had a strange expression and said, the disciples of the moon-worshipping cult are imperial doctors? The high priest of the moon-worshipping cult laughed and said, Official Chu, don't be blinded by a leaf. You need to know that voodoo can kill and also save people. The path of life and death is in your heart. Whether you kill or save, it all depends on how you want to use it. Dong Huang Tai waved his hand in disdain and said, "All right, don't talk about your useless theories." After rebuking the high priest, Dong Huang Tai turned to Chu Xiu and said, "Official Chu, if you want to go to the West Chu royal family, I can go with you. The West Chu royal family will give face to the moon-worshipping cult. Of course, it is up to you how to negotiate." Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Then I will have to trouble Lord Dong Huang Tai." After the discussion, Chu Xiu and the others did not delay and followed Dong Huang Tai to West Chu's capital city, Jianghu City. As the weakest of the three countries, Jianghu City was not as good as the eastern Qi's Great Liang City and the northern Yan's Yanjing City. Although Jianghu City was a capital city, it was not bad. But compared to the other two, it was much smaller. Dong Huang Tai said that he had some face in the West Chu royal family. This was not an exaggeration. As soon as he entered the city, someone reported the news. Before Chu Xiu and the others could enter the city, a short and fat old man in brocade smiled and said, "Lord Dong Huang Tai, you haven't come to Jianghu City for a long time. How come you have time to come today? Since you are here, don't be in a hurry to leave. Recently, my men caught a 7-colored golden pheasant in the 100,000 mountains. It is a rare treasure. Later, I will have someone add some mushrooms to stew it and we will have a good meal." The short and fat old man looked funny, but Chu Xiu could feel that he was also in the spiritual refinement realm. Of course, if he was not in the spiritual refinement realm, he would not dare to be friends with Dong Huang Tai and call him brother. At this time, when the short and fat old man saw Chu Xiu, his eyes narrowed. Obviously, he recognized Chu Xiu, but he said, "These two are?" Dong Huang Tai said lightly, "The number one of the young generation in the demon path, the leader of the martial suppression hall, the official Chu Xiu, who controls the northern Yen Jianghu. Haven't you heard of him? As for the other one, he is the leader of the northern Yen Imperial Consecration Hall, the northern King Xiang Chong of the northern Yen." Dong Huang Tai pointed at the short and fat old man and said, "This is the general of the Langia army, jade-faced flying dragon, Yuan Fu." Hearing this name, Chu Xiu and Xiang Chong's expressions became extremely strange. They knew that the Langia army was the strongest army in the West Chu army. It was equivalent to the 5 armies of the northern Yen kingdom. Of course, there were 5 of the 5 armies of the kingdom, but West Chu only had 1 Langia army. But who would have thought that this funny-looking short and fat old man was the general of the Langia army? Wasn't his image a little too different? Most importantly, his nickname was Jade-Faced Flying Dragon, which was very funny. Flying Dragon was fine, but what if he was very fast? After all, size did not mean speed. But what the hell was Jade-Faced? How could this look be called Jade-Faced? Yuan Fu did not care about the looks of Chu Xiu and Xiang Chong. He just rubbed his hands awkwardly and said, "Do you want to see His Majesty?" Dong Huang Tai rolled his eyes and said, "If we don't want to see His Majesty, why did we come all the way to Jianghu?" Yuan Fu laughed and said, "His Majesty has been a little tired recently, so it's not convenient for him to come. How about this, you can stay at my place for a night, and I'll hold a welcoming dinner for you. After reporting tomorrow, you can go see His Majesty." At this moment, Dong Huang Tai's eyes suddenly turned gloomy. "Yuan Fu, you and I are old friends. You can fool others, but now you want to fool me? Don't play tricks with me. What is His Majesty doing?" Yuan Fu slapped his thigh and smiled bitterly, "Don't vent your anger on me. I have no choice." People from the Celestial Master Mansion, the Forgetting Sword Hut, and the Storm Sword Tomb are all here. If you go in again, won't you fight? I can only send you away first. Hearing Yuan Fu say this, Chu Xiu and Xiang Chong looked at each other and their hearts sank. There were many smart people in the martial world. What they could think of, others could also think of. The Celestial Master Mansion and other forces were in West Chu. Even if they thought of it late, they were the ones who got there first. Donghuang Tai sneered, "Oh. You're all here. It's quite lively. How about bringing us along? Brother Yuan, don't worry. We'll give you face, but we'll do it inside the Imperial City." Hearing Donghuang Tai say this, Yuan Fu could only bring them into the Imperial City. They didn't want to offend people from the righteous path, so they naturally didn't want to offend people from the demonic path either. At this time, in the Imperial Palace, a middle-aged man wearing a dragon robe sat at the top. Below him sat 3 people. One of them was the Celestial Master Mansion's senior Qing. Beside him stood Xian Longzi. Actually, the Celestial Master Mansion didn't want to get involved this time. It was just that Eastern Qi was making more and more noise. The Celestial Master Mansion was one of the 3 great Daoist sections. The other 2 sects had already raised the banner of killing demons. If the Celestial Master Mansion didn't do anything, it wouldn't be good. The other 2 were Yan Ji of the Storm Sword Tomb and Shen Baochen of the Forgetting Sword Hut. Their goal was simple. They wanted to test the West Chu royal family's attitude. If the West Chu royal court was with the righteous path, they would be like a tiger with wings. But on the other hand, if the West Chu royal court was with the demonic path, they would have to kill this idea as soon as possible. The West Chu emperor, Meng Yuncheng, was a middle-aged man with a scholarly appearance. He didn't have the domineering aura of an emperor. Instead, he had a scholarly aura. Among the current emperors of the 3 countries, Meng Yuncheng wasn't the most mediocre one. He had the same ambition as Xiang Long. But it was a pity that the Northern Yan still had some foundation. With their West Chu country's power, no matter how ambitious Meng Yuncheng was, no matter how strong he couldn't change the situation. Now that they could ensure the West Chu dynasty's inheritance, it was already because of the ancestors' protection. Chapter 997. Meng Yuncheng was having a headache. Originally, this was just a dispute in the pugilistic world. As the West Chu emperor, he had no right to be involved. However, now that Eastern Qi had joined the fray, he was in a dilemma. Especially when the 3 sects were asking him about his stance, how would he know what his stance should be? Hence, Meng Yuncheng said perfunctorily, "I know why the 3 of you are here. However, this matter needs to be discussed at length. Why don't the 3 of you rest for a while? I will inform the 3 of you when the discussion is done. What do you think?" Shen Baochen said plainly, "Your Majesty, do we need to discuss this matter at length? We just want to know if Your Majesty is going to stand on the side of the righteous path or the diabolism. That is enough. We also believe that Your Majesty will make the right choice." Before Meng Yuncheng could speak, Donghuang Tai snorted coldly, "Standing on your side is the right choice. Otherwise, it is the wrong choice." Shen Baochen, since you have spoken, what else can the others say? You are not letting Your Majesty choose, you are forcing Your Majesty to make a choice. Seeing Donghuang Tai and Chu Xiu walk into the hall, the few present frowned. The diabolism's reaction was not slow. They had caught up to West Chu so quickly. Chu Xiu said plainly, "Everyone, this matter has nothing to do with the 3 of you. The Chunyang Dao sect and the real martial arts sect did not care about the common people and started a war. When the time comes, the people will be plunged into misery and suffering. They will have to bear the consequences. Do you want to bear the consequences too?" Shen Baochen shook his head and said, "Chu Xiu, the one who really did not care about the common people is you. Do you really think the whole pugilistic world doesn't know what you did in the Northern Yan? Killing wantonly, suppressing the dissidents. The whole Northern Yan pugilistic world is trembling under your knife. The huge Northern Yan has become a den of demons. The people are plunged into misery and suffering today in exchange for peace in the future. Chu Xiu laughed coldly and said, "What a joke. You're not a Northern Yen man, so what right do you have to speak up for those Northern Yen forces? If it wasn't for me keeping an eye on them, they would have killed more people than I did. Once a hero pulls out his sword, it will be another 10 years of calamity for the common people. All of you are heroes, and all of you want to be heroes. However, little do you know that the ones who bring calamity to the world are you, the heroes who claim to be righteous." That senior Qing of Mount Longhu stood up and said indifferently, "Solitary yin does not grow, solitary yang does not grow. Chu Xiu, you are also proficient in my Taoist martial arts, so you should know what these words mean. The righteous and demonic paths need to find a balance. Right now, your demonic path is glorious enough. In the past few righteous and demonic wars, you demonic Dao always had the upper hand. In the primitive demon cave, the ones who benefited were your demonic Dao. If we let you go on like this, are you going to go to Kunlun Mountain and rebuild the devil cult in the future?" Chu Xiu looked at the sleepy senior Qing and really wanted to say yes. However, before he could speak, Donghuang Tai sneered, "Yes my ass. Old Daoist, your Mount Longhu was forced by the cult master to seal off your mountain for a year, and now you still have the face to meddle in these things. Another day, when the cult master comes to your Mount Longhu, will you behave yourself?" Senior Qing's sleepy eyes opened wide and revealed a trace of coldness. "Donghuang Tai, do you really think my celestial master mansion is afraid of your moon-worshipping cult? Last time, the old celestial master didn't want people to die, so he showed mercy and didn't fight head-on. Do you really think Yi Xiaonan is number one in the world?" Donghuang Tai sneered. "So what? The sect master's demonic might is unrivaled, but your Mount Longhu only has you two old men to support it. When the two of you kick the bucket, I will slaughter your celestial master abode sooner or later and turn your Mount Longhu into a snake-cat mountain." Both in West Chu, the celestial master mansion was the strongest of the righteous sects, and the moon-worshipping cult was the strongest of the demonic sections. The grievances between the two sides were endless, so Donghuang Tai didn't hold back when he spoke. On the other side, Meng Yuncheng saw that both sides were about to fight, so he hurriedly advised, "Calm down, you two. Let's talk this out." However, as an emperor, his presence was extremely low, and the people on both sides didn't listen to him at all. Senior Qing threw away the cane in his hand, and lightning flashed around him. A thunder god Dharma idol appeared behind him. "Donghuang Tai. You're courting death. I gave you some face, but you still dare to open a dye shop. Even if I kick the bucket one day, I will still drag you down with me." As soon as he finished speaking, Senior Qing directly rushed towards Donghuang Tai, the purple heaven thunder in his hand shining. How did that power seem like someone who was about to die? Donghuang Tai sneered, "Then this lord will send you down first." Boundless black demonic flames rose, and the power of the burning sky mirror had been exerted to the extreme by Donghuang Tai. Even though he hadn't completely recovered from the loss of vitality in the primitive demon cave, it didn't affect his combat power at this time. Although the two of them fought, they were still restrained. They didn't directly blow up Meng Yuncheng's palace, but directly rushed out of the palace and fought fiercely outside. Xian Longzi looked at Chu Xiu at this time, and he said, "Official Chu is now famous in the martial world, but last time, you and I didn't fight to our heart's content. This time, you and I both stepped into the real fire spirit refinement realm. I want to see official Chu's true strength." In the past, Xian Longzi had fought with Chu Xiu once, but at that time, Chu Xiu was only a half-step real pellet realm, and he was a real pellet realm. It could be considered as bullying the weak. As a result, he couldn't suppress Chu Xiu, and he was interrupted by Chu Wuji halfway. Now, he had stepped into the real fire spirit refinement realm not long ago, and Chu Xiu had even caught up and stepped into the real fire spirit refinement realm earlier than him. Xian Longzi didn't have any jealousy, but he was very interested in Chu Xiu. As his voice fell, Xian Longzi's figure moved, and he rushed towards Chu Xiu. His figure turned into a lightning, and his speed was extremely fast. In the past, when Chu Xiu faced Xian Longzi's terrifying speed, he couldn't even see the opponent's figure with the heaven sun gazing at air technique. Now, Chu Xiu didn't care about any speed. He condensed the annihilation fire around him, and he slapped Xian Longzi away. Lightning exploded, and the lightning around Xian Longzi condensed into a liquid that revolved around his body, extinguishing the world-extinguishing flames that were like maggots in his bones. Although he suffered a loss, Xian Longzi still laughed loudly and said, "Haha! Awesome!" With a loud roar, Xian Longzi rushed towards Chu Xiu again, and the two fought outside the hall again. Shen Baochen and Yan Ji looked at each other. Since they were fighting over there, they certainly couldn't be idle, so they rushed towards Xiang Chong together. In fact, they didn't know who Xiang Chong was. As a prince of the Northern Yen and the person in charge of the Imperial Consecration Hall, Xiang Chong was very famous in the Northern Yen. However, outside of the Northern Yen, he was just a nobody. However, in Shen Baochen and Yan Ji's opinion, regardless of who the other party was, anyone who was so close to people like Chu Xiu and Dong Huangtai was definitely a demon. They just had to fight. At the sight of this, Xiang Chong cursed inwardly as he frantically defended himself. Since he came in, he hadn't said a word. Why did he have to be beaten? Most importantly, Dong Huangtai and Chu Xiu were fighting one-on-one. If it was me, why is it a siege? Don't you have any shame? The few of them fought all the way to the outside of the palace. The power directly attracted all the experts in the palace, but unfortunately, no one dared to stop them. West Chu was not strong. In the entire West Chu royal family, or even the West Chu court, the strongest person was only Yuan Fu, who was in the true fire spirit refinement realm. He was about the same level as Xiang Chong and could not be compared to Chu Xiu or Dong Huangtai. At this time, in the field, everyone had already exchanged a few blows. Although it was chaotic, it was still clear who had the upper hand and who was at a disadvantage. Dong Huangtai's side was obviously at a disadvantage. Senior Qing from Longhu Mountain looked like he was going to die no matter how you looked at it. However, his strength was extremely shocking. His strength was unfathomable, and the exquisiteness of his attacks was accumulated through countless battles. In addition, Dong Huangtai's injuries from burning his blood essence had not yet healed, so he was at a disadvantage. As for Chu Xiu's side, he completely had the upper hand. Xian Longzi was the most talented person in the generation of the Celestial Master Mansion. If it was not for his personality that often went crazy, perhaps the person in charge of the Celestial Master Mansion would be him. After entering the true fire spirit refinement realm, Xian Longzi's strength was even more shocking. His speed was extremely fast, and his body could even transform into the thunder of heaven and earth. Before his voice even arrived, he was already there. With a casual strike, the 5 thunder execution fell like a thunderstorm. The power was simply shocking. However, no matter how shocking the power was, it could not withstand the extreme power. The peerless heavenly saber's damage was too serious. To use the evil moon saber, one had to rely on the heart demon to suppress the weapon spirit. There was too little time, so Chu Xiu directly used his body to fight Xian Longzi. No matter how fast Xian Longzi was, as long as he came into contact with Chu Xiu's world-extinguishing flame, he would immediately retreat far away and use his own strength to resist the power of the world-extinguishing flame. As long as Chu Xiu's fist flew over, Xian Longzi would have to use all his strength to resist. After all, he had just entered the true fire spirit refinement realm. In terms of power, he was completely suppressed by Chu Xiu. The most unlucky person was Xiang Chong. He really could not hold on much longer. Although Yan Ji had also entered the true fire spirit refinement realm not long ago, his talent was extraordinary. He had merged with the divine weapon Yanji from a young age, so his strength was definitely not weak among the 5 sword sections. As for Shen Baochen, he was even more terrifying. The leader of the sword hut was in the prime of his life and was still very young. It could even be said that among the 5 sword sects, he had the greatest hope of entering the mysterious heaven and earth realm. Furthermore, by relying on some external objects, Shen Baochen could even directly exchange blows with existences in the mysterious heaven and earth realm. Right now, it was much easier to deal with Xiang Chong without the 9-dragon seal. Under their combined attacks, Xiang Chong was already vomiting blood after a few moves. You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.